We live in a world where everyone is programmed and hypnotized as if by magic. Like the turkey, you can like hypnotize by like holding its head down on the ground, like drawing a line in the sand in front or the dirt in front of it. That'll completely blow a turkey's mind. So they say. I've never tried it.
So what can people do to wake up?
Hypnotize turkeys. I don't know what people can do to wake up. I'm trying to wake up.
Yeah.
Just be aware as best as you can of how like everything is just a narrative. Like outside of the mentations that we create ourselves and the mentations that are put onto us from society, from our families, from the language we speak. Outside of those constructions, the experiences you get from the outside world, your senses and your thoughts and your feelings, that's the only thing that's actually real. I hope it's really not just us.
Right.
And everyone else is like, self-created internal hell. No. Every waking moment is a joyous experience of growth and opportunity. I find myself totally spiritual-centered and at peace with the balance between me and the rest of the universe.
We must have a high tolerance for chaos. Learn to embrace the flow.
Forgive all that we can't forget. Regret nothing we can't let go. For despite what we have learned, infinitely more we do not know.
So let us tune in frequencies
until new vibrations grow. Let's pretend that it never ends.
And now, it's time to start the show.
Comes from?
Of course.
Back in the, 70s?
I think. Yeah, I used to say that, it was a conspiracy, and not an actual conspiracy, like, people, intentionally planning, but that the actual concept of the meme is so undermining that
as a thought that reproduces?
Yes.
A thought that acts as an organism?
It's so, yeah, the actual meaning of meme is so, undermining of, like, consensus reality that its efficacy was dulled by the word meme taking on this greater meaning of pictures of Patrick Stewart, like, why the fuck, and like, Willy Wonka, and
one does not simply.
Exactly, Sean Bean.
What's the original meaning of the word meme, then?
The original meaning of the word meme is, it comes from, mimeme. It has the same root as, like, mimicry.
Mimesis.
Yeah, exactly. A meme is a reproducible unit of idea. It was intentionally named meme as an analogy to the gene, so that you can get memetics instead of genetics and so on.
Okay.
There were other people had the same idea at around the same time, and there were different words for it. But the one that caught on, the meme that was most successful, was meme, partially because of the way that it was built to already be able to be used in the same way as, and then provide a mental analogy to the way a gene behaves.
Do memes reproduce the same way genes do?
They do not. Genes are subject to Darwinian evolution.
Right.
Memes, it's closer to Lamarckian. Lamarck was the guy, I think that's how you pronounce his name, I really don't know, or give a fuck. He was the guy that, what am I trying to say? He had the theory that acquired characteristics could be passed on to the next generation.
Okay.
So, like, if you worked out and really got your upper arms really strong, and then you had a kid, they'd come out with stronger arms because you got yourself super buff. And, like, that's not how it works. It's because the DNA in your genes is completely untouched by what you do in your body, in your genitals, the gametes, the sex cells.
Mm-hmm.
The DNA in them is separate from the DNA in the rest of your body. So anything you actually do to, like, strain your eyes with really good vision, like, your kids aren't going to have any better vision because they're just going to have the same eyes you were born with.
Right.
Or similar eyes to the ones you were born with.
Right.
You can't...
The basic code, the underlying
But
code.
memes can reproduce that way.
Right.
Because they're not a physical thing that's tied to a substrate and, like, oh, well, the DNA is kept set, whatever. Like, memes, you can. That's what the telephone game is.
Mm.
The telephone game is every generation it reproduces in someone else's mind, it's slightly different.
Yeah.
And every person that tells it to someone else, like Elementary, My Dear Watson. Sherlock Holmes never actually said in any of the books or stories, Elementary, My Dear Watson. But he did say Elementary. He did say My Dear Watson. He did say other things like that, and it just became gelled in the mind of the consensus reality that Elementary, My Dear Watson, or Play It Again, Sam. He never actually says Play It Again, Sam.
Really? That I did not know.
In Casablanca.
That I did not know.
Or the whole thing where, like, all those people, about the Mandela effect, where, like, all these people were convinced that Mandela was, like, still in jail or dead or whatever, but, like, it turned out that, like... And there's people that are like, that means reality shifted, like the Matrix. And there's people that are just like, well, that's weird that so many people think the wrong thing. Remember...
Bernstein Bears was one of them.
Yeah, remember when Paul from the Wonder Years was Marilyn Manson?
Right.
Like, that shit doesn't happen so much in the day of the internet because it's just so easy to Google who is the person, IMDb has the guy that plays Paul from the Wonder Years. Oh, what's Marilyn Manson's real name? Oh, they're not the same thing. They were born in different places. They have different biographies. They have different Wikipedia entries. That kind of, or the one about the Mikey Likes It kid getting his stomach blown up, dying from the coke and the pop rocks. Like, these days, you have the ability to fact check that kind of thing, but those kind of stories used to be...
But could there be time shifts that are imperceptible?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I don't see any reason why there couldn't be.
Right.
It doesn't seem to be the most plausible solution to something like the Mandela effect.
Mm.
That doesn't mean it's not true. It's just... I mean, you have to, the human mind, it generates maps. Then the maps are supposed to reflect reality.
The maps are not the territory.
The maps are not the territory. They're supposed to be a reflection of the territory. So, I can create a map where those kind of time shifts do happen because, the Matrix, whatever, or this is all a giant extraterrestrial experiment, and they paused it and, then changed the coding on Nelson Mandela in the simulation, or, like, whatever. Like, I can... That is a possible narrative. But my narrative that just, there's a lot of people that just kind of pick up information from whatever, and wrong things can spread too. Seems to be a simpler one. Because I know those kind of things exist. Right. Whereas I don't have a mechanism or an entity or entity in the broadest sense, not like necessarily an entity with a directed mind, but whatever it is that will make these time shifts happen. I don't have any model to fit that in. I do have a model that says that, a lot of human beings, like, they just kind of, pick up information ambiently.
Right.
There's just things that, like, I remember day of 9/11. That same day, I was walking back to my house from my sister's house down Toll Street in Baltimore, and there's neighbors out on the street, and they're already talking about how Bin Laden did it. This is hours before Bin Laden took credit for it. People on the street already knew Bin Laden did it. How the hell did they know that?
Damn. I don't know how 9/11 keeps becoming a recurring topic on this podcast.
9/11 is probably the most important thing that happened in our lifetime.
Yeah. I was just at the 9/11 museum. And after 2.5 hours, I was standing around with a crowd of people, with all the images all around. I was like, okay, I'm done now.
When I say
I
important,
don't need this anymore.
When I say important, I mean in terms of cultural impact and shift of consensus reality, constructed consciousness.
Yeah.
I don't mean it was actually important. Like 3,000 people died. That's 150,000 people die every day.
Right.
This is something I often talk to my brother about because he's a real big proponent of this way of thinking. It's like, it's this error in human cognition. That's not how he says it, that's how I said it. But he's the one who first had the idea, my brother Charlie. Like, how come, like, so 20 people, probably in the time I've been trying to get this tortured, rambling sentence out, probably 20 people somewhere in the world, in different places, all just died. Mm-hmm. That's just a statistic. You can just say, yeah, that's probably true, and, like, your mind moves on. But if I'm like, oh, man, Mark, that, you know that diner we were just at? Somebody shot 20 people. You'd be like, oh, my God!
Yeah. Right.
That's terrible. 20 people just got killed?
Because we just happen to be close to it, yeah.
Or even if it wasn't there, like, if I'm like, hey, Mark, like, you know, I just saw on the news, you know, some shopping center in Akron, Ohio, there was a suicide bomber or whatever. You'd be like, 20 people were dead. You'd be like, that's horrible. But, like, if I'm just like, oh, you know, 20 people just died during this sentence somewhere in the world, ding, 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 you're just like, oh, well, pfft. And if I say 150,000 people die every day, you're like, wow, yeah, okay, well, whatever. But if 20 of them die in the same place at the same time, somebody's like, oh my God. It's like there's error in human cognition, even though that 20 people is not even a drop in the bucket.
Yeah,
it's
there was
a drop.
the whole context around it, that's why. There was the fact that it was an attack on American soil, the fact that it was right there in New York City, like,
exactly.
That added to all of it.
But 150,000 people die every day.
Right.
Like, that day, 153,000 people died. That's like, I can't quite do that math in my head right now, but that's like, what, like less than a 5%?
Well, that many? No, it was only like, what, 3,000 to 5,000, wasn't it?
But 150,000 people would have died that day, regardless.
Oh, right. Right.
Assuming that none of those people who died would have died, been one of the 150,000 under different circumstances. Like, well, if he hadn't been on the plane, he would have had a heart attack later in the day, or whatever. Like, if you want to exclude any kind of that muddying the waters and just assume that all of those people wouldn't have died, 150,000 people would have died anyway, and instead it was 153,000. That's...
Gotcha.
I mean, there's a concept in statistics called standard deviation, where, like, 150,000 is, like, flexible. It's not a literal... You know, it's not literally, like, that exact amount every day. So it flexes back and forth. 153,000 is, like, within... Like, probably some days 153,000 people just die. And it's not... Probably some days, like, 160,000 people die.
Statistical average.
You know, it all averages out. But, like, it's just like, oh, well, whatever. Like, that's... I mean, that's, like, the population of a town.
Yeah.
That's a population... Could be a population of a small city. I mean, how many people are in Vineland?
So, I know you said you wanted to talk a little bit about conspiracy theories, but let's just start as a segue. What do you think of the 9/11 conspiracy theories?
I don't think they're necessary.
Okay.
I don't know enough to say that they're not true. That's where conspiracy theory always goes wrong. Is they come up with interesting narratives, and then they say this is true, not this could be true, not this is plausibly true. I mean, it's a problem that everyone has, that they think that their narrative is the reality. But when your reality goes against the consensus reality...
Well, they're all just overlapping concentric circles of conspiracies anyway, right?
Exactly. I mean, conspiracies are real. You know, I remember one time in my wayward youth, a friend of mine and his girlfriend picked me up in my house, and we drove around and smoked the devil's lettuce, marijuana. And he said to me, if my mom asks, we went out to get milk. And that's why we were out driving around. I'm like, first of all, your mom's never going to ask me. But secondly, I'm going to remember this forever as an example of conspiracy in real life. You know that Hitler was originally infiltrated the German Workers' Party that became the National Socialist Party.
Yes.
He originally infiltrated it as an informant for Army intelligence.
Really?
Well, I don't know, I wasn't there, but...
Huh.
He was... You know, the FBI did the same thing in America in COINTELPRO, that any anti-war group or the Weathermen or the Black Panthers or whatever was... they'd have operatives infiltrate. Sometimes they would just be there to get information. Sometimes they'd be there to be provocateurs.
And so what, he ended up becoming sympathetic to the cause?
No, I think he just saw that he wound up becoming sympathetic to his drive for power.
And just used them to...
But it's some like Palpatine shit. I always felt, when I found that out, because it's not something you learn in school or whatever, like they talk a lot about once Hitler is in charge of the Nazi Party, what he does from there. And they talk a lot about his time before that, you know, being in prison, writing Mein Kampf, whatever. But they never actually talk about, like, how he came to have a party hanging on his every word.
Yeah.
And it was because the government was threatened by socialists, so they put him to go infiltrate it. I don't know why I like that story so much, but I feel like it explains everything about everything in the world. Like, that's the way the world really works. Like, the only reason that a madman with that kind of sociopathy or whatever would be able to get that much of a mechanism of society and government and military behind his dreams. I'm just gonna wait for the penis parade to...
Yeah.
Fucking hate motorcycles. It's like every time somebody dies in a motorcycle accident, it's like, oh, it's so tragic, he was taken before his time. And it's like, but if, like, this guy, like, tried to fuck an alligator and he got killed, you wouldn't be like, oh, that's so tragic. You're like, well, what the fuck do you think happens when you try to fuck an alligator? Like, you get on this thing that, like, anybody that taps it with their automobile, you're gonna go flying and die. You do it because, like, oh, it's a thrill. Like, I'm on the open road. I'm not some square inside of an automobile. Tap, whoosh, airborne, crash, dead. Then people see it in the news, like, it's so sad. I saw bumper stickers like, you know, like, watch out for motorcycles, or like, you know, like, keep, like, basically, like, it's my job. Like, some other guy wants to ride a motorcycle for a thrill, but it's my job to make sure that I don't hit him.
Yeah.
Like, which in my head, like, when Jimmy Carter said he was guilty of, like, committing adultery in his heart or whatever, like, I committed vehicular homicide against people on motorcycles in my head, I'd be like the fucking Adolf Hitler of killing people on motorcycles. To Adolf Hitler, I don't think he actually killed anybody, like, personally.
Oh, come on, he must have killed somebody.
Like himself with his bare hands or whatever? Like,
well, yeah, somebody. Well, he was in World War I, wasn't he?
Ah, that's a good point. Maybe he did.
Yeah, because he has to have a little bit of blood on his hands.
I don't know. I think that, like, I mean, there's people that, like, have never actually killed anybody that order other people to go kill people.
That's true.
It happens all the time. How many people did Obama ever kill? I mean, with his bare hands, not by, you know, signing drone strike orders.
Right.
And I don't mean to pick on Obama, just that he was the one that there was maybe a hope it wouldn't be like that.
Hope it change.
Exactly. Like, I always said the entire time Obama was president, and the right would tear him apart. They'd criticize him for everything. He was holding his coffee cup instead of saluting the soldier. His wife's dress, the sleeves are too short. He didn't do this. He had his feet up on the desk. He, you know, likes barbecue sauce or whatever. Like, I don't even know. But, like, the things they were picking on him for, and then the completely made up horseshit things like, he's a Kenyan. He wasn't born in America. His birth certificate's a fraud. He's secretly a Muslim. One of the first controversies about Barack Obama was the right wing was mad about controversial things his pastor said.
Right.
I'm like, you guys know that a pastor is a Christian. If he's Obama's pastor, Obama can't be a Muslim. Because Muslims don't have pastors. That's like, he's a Jew. Here's his pope. Jewish people don't have popes. I don't think. I don't know. I don't mean to sound anti-Semitic. Maybe they do have popes. So where I was coming from was the entire time that the right wing was picking on Obama for like the most ridiculous thing. And there's so many things to actually criticize him for. Hey, what about Guantanamo Bay? Why are we still in Afghanistan? Hey, wait a minute. You ordered a drone strike that killed a U.S. citizen who was a 16-year-old boy. His father was also a U.S. citizen and a terrorist. And a terrorist. But, like, he's a United States citizen. You arrest him. You hold him on trial by the laws of the land. A jury finds him guilty, and then he faces his punishment. That's what happens to a U.S. citizen that does something wrong.
Right.
And maybe if in trying to capture him, he's, like, violent and shoots back, maybe you're like, oh, we had to kill him. There was no other way. I don't even know if that's, like, maybe... But I'm not even going to open up
But this is flat out just...
Like, dude was driving in a car, unawares, like, a drone flies up and drops a bomb on him.
Damn.
U.S. citizen. Killed a U.S. citizen and his 16-year-old son. He had a daughter, too. She died when Trump did his attack.
Where was this located?
I don't remember. I have no head for geography.
And what did he do? Like, you said he was a terrorist.
Yeah, he was like or I don't know if he was a terrorist or not. Maybe that's all lies. I wasn't there. I'm just going on the information I'm given.
Yeah.
He was some kind of, like he was connected to Al Qaeda or ISIS or ISIL or what's the other one? The Muslim Brotherhood or like every week it's got a new name.
Yeah.
Because they hope that if they just keep changing the name, we don't notice that like this is all fucking bullshit. Like, the one about the mafia? This is one of my favorite stories. I have a lot of them, I guess. I've lived a long time. But, so, nobody knew the mafia existed. And people knew the mafia existed, but, like, it was a big, open secret. They were a secret society, like the kind that doesn't supposed to exist.
Yeah.
And, the FBI is like, there's no such thing. The mafia, it's an urban legend. It's a myth. Yes, there are small criminal syndicates, but there's no such thing as the mafia. We're the FBI. You can take our word for it. And, like, in media, it wasn't even called the mafia. Like, you read some, like, hard-boiled crime story from, like, the 1950s, and it's like, he was a shooter for the outfit. He was a low-bit hoodlum from the syndicate. From the Combine. They never, like, they all had, like, names that, like, he worked for the corporation.
Did they have the name for themselves?
Of course they did, but their name for themselves is Cosa Nostra.
Right.
This thing of ours. So, the FBI, like, after, what's his face? The first informant, the mob guy who, I can't remember his name now. He leaked the information in, like, the 60s to the FBI. And that's where, like, the first real information about the mafia to the public became, the whole system of, like, being made, and the capo regimes, and the entire...
Which
like,
has its roots all the way back from when the first immigrants came over.
Yeah, it has its roots in ancient Rome.
Yeah, but it was secret that whole time.
Yeah. So the FBI can no longer say there's no such thing. It's an urban legend. So instead they say, yes, La Cosa Nostra. What's La Cosa Nostra? Well, first, it's grammatically incorrect. But, like, it's not... They call themselves Cosa Nostra, not La Cosa Nostra.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't make sense. That's, like, this thing of ours.
Yeah.
That's not...
It's just Cosa Nostra.
But they couldn't... They spent so long denying the Mafia that when the Mafia finally was undeniable, they're like, yes, La Cosa Nostra! Well, the FBI is very aware of the La Cosa Nostra problem. Silly people, all this time you've been coming and talking to us about the Mafia. If you'd asked us about La Cosa Nostra, we'd have told you everything. They're just like, they think that by changing the name, they've actually changed anything. Mm-hmm. Or like when global warming became climate change. Or like when the War Department became the Department of Defense.
Yeah.
Like they think that they can just change names, and it actually changes it.
Well... It changes the way people think about it.
Well, that's the hell of it, is that they're not wrong.
Yeah, right.
That's where, again, the point where, the ways that fiction and reality blur into one another.
Right.
like, again, to talk about the Mafia. So, what's his face? Joe Velacci? Something like that? Doesn't matter. He leaked the information about the Mafia, and for the first time, like, you know, any idea of how the Mafia actually worked was in the public mind.
Right.
Mario Puzo wrote The Godfather. The Godfather was turned into a very popular movie and series of movies. He didn't do a lot of research. He just had an idea in his head of, like, this is, like, my idea of how the Mafia would work.
Yeah.
You know, write a story about, you know, going to France, but, like, you don't research what France is really like, so it's just, like, in your head, like, oh, the Eiffel Tower's in the background, and, like, there's a guy in a beret eating cheese, and, like, but you're not, like, you know, you know, there's some, you know, guy with a pencil-thin mustache smoking a cigarette and, like, you know, romancing a woman, like, in a cafe. Like, you just, like, or, like, there's, like, you know, some, you know, countryside and some guy with a baguette in his arm. Like, you just, like, imagine, like, you know, people in funny striped shirts or whatever. Like, you can just
covered almost all of the stereotypes.
But, you know, like, but you just fill it up with, like, your idea of how it would be. So, and then it turns out that, like, the French people read that book and forever afterwards start patterning their lives based... That's what happened to the Mafia.
That's what happened to the Mafia.
The Mafia all read The Godfather and went and go see The Godfather, and then they start talking about honor and family.
Holy shit.
They still live like small-minded thugs. But in their head, they've accepted this fiction as their own reality.
That's amazing.
Fiction and reality shape each other, absolutely. They blur back and forth, blend. We live in a world where everyone is programmed and hypnotized as if by magic. Like the turkey that you can, like, hypnotize by, like, holding its head down on the ground, like drawing a line in the sand in front of it with dirt in front of it. That'll completely blow a turkey's mind. So they say. I've never tried it.
I'm not a turkey.
Exactly. I've never had to hypnotize a turkey. Not on my bucket list. Probably going to go the rest of my life without hypnotizing any turkeys.
So what can people do to wake up?
Hypnotize turkeys. I don't know what people can do to wake up. I'm trying to wake up.
Yeah.
Just you be aware as best as you can of how, like, everything is just a narrative. And, you know, you try to, you know, adjust your narrative by the information you're given by the outside world and by your own thoughts and your own feelings. Because those are all the things that, like, outside of the mentations that we create ourselves and the mentations that are put onto us from society, from our families, from, you know, the language we speak, outside of those constructions, which are constructions, the experiences you get from the outside world, your senses and your thoughts and your feelings, that's the only thing that's actually real. Everything else is just a construction. I mean, it's real. Like, you say the government isn't real. Government absolutely is real. Go, you know, try, you know, smoking a blunt in City Hall and find out how real government is.
Right.
You know, you can say, well, there's no sort of, like, police or social fiction, but, you know, try, you know, giving one the middle finger in the middle of the street and see how well that social fiction works out for you. Because the thing humans do, and we seem to be the only ones that do it, at least on Earth. I have no idea what anything is like anywhere else. I don't really know what everything's like here. We
believe and act out our own narratives.
And we create ideas that then, if enough people act as if they are real, they become real.
That's the memes.
Well, yeah, exactly. Like government. Government's a meme. I used to get into an argument with this friend of mine all the time where he'd be like, you know, if you want to get rid of government, what you do is you get yourself elected to government and attack it from within. And I'm like, you can't attack it from within. It's a giant institution that exists in all these people's minds, and they'll reject any attempt to attack it from within and either co-opt it or reject it or destroy it. Marginalize you, kill you. You can't.
Yeah, and Trump's the best attempt at a virus.
Yeah, and
the government to date.
And what's he actually doing? He's just pursuing. His blundering is blubbering around fucking baby. He, all he's really
Whining
doing...
and complaining.
All he's really doing is allowing a certain portion of the government to realign government into what they believe government should be. Republicans say, like... Oh, I didn't finish the Obama point. Republicans say, like, we want less government. Then they want to make, like, laws about who you can marry, and laws about what chemicals you can use, and laws about what kind of religion you can belong to, and laws about, like, they say they want less government, but then their vision for everything is people should be controlled by laws, law and order. Blue lives matter.
Right.
They're not actually against government. They have their own vision of government. It's just not a vision of government that is their narrative for what government should be.
Yeah, they think government will leave them alone as long as they're following those laws that they believe that everybody should be following.
Yeah, but, like, why should we have to follow those laws?
Right, exactly.
Like, why should there be a law against, you know, taking mushrooms, but not a law against dumping weird chemicals into the water? Say. Why should there be a law, no law against, you know, lying about what your medicine can do, but there should be a law against, like, two dudes getting married? Like, why is that not a priority? Why do you think that society can get on without that, but the society desperately needs to fix this? It's all the government people, they all have a vision of what government's supposed to do. So anyway, what I was going to say is, the entire 8 years, they criticized Obama. It was all bullshit, made up, ridiculous, are you kidding me shit. And there was actual stuff to criticize him for.
Yeah.
And like I said, he bombed a 16-year-old U.S. citizen. That's bad.
Right.
That opens up all kinds of dangerous precedents. And, you know, he was maybe a little, overzealous with the executive orders. And there's legitimate things, like maybe he was, maybe he wasn't, but that's a legitimate thing, a conversation to have, whereas, like, he's a Muslim from Kenya, it's just like, you're just a fucking idiot. Yeah. You're an idiot, go jump into a volcano. And I said at the time, the reason the Republicans aren't criticizing him for any of the things that he legitimately can be criticized for, and should be criticized for, is because when they're in power, they want to do the same things.
Oh, sure. Sure.
And you see it because pretty much the first two things Trump does when he's in office are abuse executive orders and bomb that kid's sister. Like, member of the same family.
Serious? That's for real?
The 8-year-old girl that he killed in the attack. Where the fuck was it? The one that, like, the first thing he did in January.
Yeah. It was it in Syria?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I have no head for geography.
I think it was in Syria.
Yeah. The girl that died, like, one of the, because there were more than one kid that died, but one of the girls that died, this, like, 8-year-old girl or whatever, was the sister of, she was also a U.S. citizen, I guess. I don't know. I mean,
that's crazy.
This could all be fake news, and I've been, you know,
yeah, right.
I didn't take the red pill, or whatever the fuck. I don't know what.
Well, that's my new thing. Is, you know how you got the memes of Orpheus holding out the two pills?
Yes.
What if I told you that both pills did the same exact thing?
Exactly.
So that was the sister. That's insane.
So, like, Trump literally, I said, they're just going to, when they're in office again, they're just going to do the same shit. And you can tell they're going to do the same shit because they're not calling him on. Not that they wouldn't have called him on it. Because their hypocrisy is, like, it's hard for the human brain to comprehend infinity. Like, vast, endless limitlessness going on forever. But if you can't actually wrap your mind around that, consider the hypocrisy of the Republicans as a very close. I mean, we've gone from literally, in my lifetime, you know, can somebody who is not even willing to serve in our armed forces really be the commander-in-chief? To, oh, I have bone splints. Oh, I can't be in the military, Dad.
Right.
Oh, now he's going to be, Trump's our greatest, he's going to show everyone, he's going to make America great with the military. Like, in my lifetime, it's gone from a draft dodger can't even be somebody who didn't fight in the Vietnam War should not be allowed to be president, but, like, Bill Clinton wasn't in the Vietnam War because he was like, I've got a scholarship to go to, like, where was it, Oxford?
Yeah, something
like
that.
if you have a choice, I'm going to die in a desert jungle for no reason. Or I'm going to go study at Oxford.
Right.
I don't care who the fuck you are, or what, how, like, patriotic or whatever, like, you're going to go study at Oxford.
Definitely.
Vietnam War was bullshit. They knew it was bullshit at the time. It was bullshit. I'm not saying that draft dodgers should be, like, well, they shouldn't be allowed to be president, but if you set the precedent, if you set the principle that draft dodgers shouldn't be allowed to, people who didn't serve in the armed forces shouldn't be allowed to be president. People who weren't willing to serve in the armed forces shouldn't be allowed to be the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. Then you can't then just turn around and, like, well, George Bush, he dodged the draft. Donald Trump really dodged the draft.
Right.
You guys just fucking love them.
How did Donald Trump dodge the draft?
He claimed that he had bone splints in his ankles or some shit. Which he didn't. I mean, I don't know, I wasn't there. Maybe he did. Maybe it just, like, really seemed like he didn't.
Yeah.
But considering his propensity that, like, every fucking word that ever comes out of his mouth is a goddamn lie designed to benefit him, it's really in character that he would not. I don't know, I wasn't there. Maybe I'm a victim of the liberal media. I don't know. I mean, it's pretty fake news.
Who knows what really goes through that guy's head?
Fucking Donald Trump.
Who knows?
Fucking Donald Trump.
If his tweets are any indication, we're fucked.
Yeah, well, it's not going to last. It can't.
Oh, I just don't even try and concentrate on that narrative anymore.
Nope, me neither. It was fun for a couple months, and then it just became very depressing.
Yeah.
Like, and it's not even like, oh, this is still going on, but it's like the number of people that are happy that it's going on.
Yeah. It's like SNL. It's still running.
Exactly. And then, like, wow, there's people that still look forward to the next week's episode of
Once
Saturday
in a
Night.
while, there's a new interesting character, or the cast puts out a good episode, but other than that...
Yeah. Yeah, it's not, it's just, like, I don't understand how, like, I knew Donald Trump, I figured out Donald Trump was a piece of shit human being, but, like, I was, like, 8 years old. You know, maybe even as old as 10.
Well, and now you have the 8 and 10-year-olds that know he's a piece of shit human being and watched him get elected as president of the United States.
But, like, there's other people my age who, like, maybe they wouldn't have figured it out by the time they were 8 or whatever, but certainly could have figured it out by the time they were 40.
Yeah, but a lot of people did it because they thought... Yeah, I mean...
But what about her emails? Yeah, I know.
No. But I mean, like, you have a lot of smart business-type people that thought he would make things easier in that realm, the business and finance realm, and didn't give a shit about his actual personality.
Yeah, but, like...
I know, but still, who in their right mind...
He's a horrible businessman.
Who in their right mind would...
He's a horrible
for
businessman.
a second consider him.
He's a con man.
Yeah.
He goes bankrupt. He... You know, has, like, fraudulent enterprises like Trump University.
Mm-hmm.
He, you know, rips off investors. He doesn't pay contractors. He's a fucking con man. Like, he's not a good businessman even.
Right.
He's like a tick. He doesn't actually do anything.
This is what has to happen, right? I mean,
No,
when
I
you
know.
have empires that fall and these governmental structures that crumble, I mean, this is how it happens.
That's where we're living now. I mean, like,
Yeah.
the fact that whether or not it's even true or not is irrelevant. The fact that there's a possibility that there's a compelling argument to be made that a foreign power, a potentially hostile nation who we have had hostilities with for decades, may have attempted to interfere in our presidential election. The United States interferes in other people's presidential elections.
Of course.
And there's the Noam Chomsky angle where he's like, "Huh, this is ridiculous, the outrage that Russia would have blah, 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 when, you know, for decades the United States foreign policy has been," well, of course. But that doesn't happen to us. Like, we would never allow that. if some country tried fucking in our election, we would, accidentally drop a bomb on them or something. We would, assassinate, have to secretly assassinate someone. We would...
Yeah.
I don't know how things work, but, we would never tolerate. We were the alpha dog. The fact that the Russians, not only is it possible, not only is it plausible, but, then the leader of the country is, just puckering his lips on Putin's ass. Mm-hmm. Praising him, fawning over him, kowtowing to him. The days when the United States was the alpha dog are over.
It reveals a major chink in the armor.
The days of... It's when the Roman Empire fell. And, the Roman Empire didn't fall. It wasn't, a one-day thing.
No, but neither is this.
It wasn't people at the time were this is the fall of the Roman Empire. But, in retrospect, they can point to something and say, this was really when the fall began.
Mm-hmm.
This was really when the fall began. I knew that probably the Americans were going to have to go away. That the United States of America would have to cease to be what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not when all of humanity is joined in as one, we're Americans.
That's irrelevant.
It was gonna have to come to an end one way or another.
Right.
Between now and the better world. The better people.
True.
But I don't know, I guess I'd hoped it would be more fun. Even if it was, violent and I died or whatever, but, this is just sad.
Wow, it hasn't really gotten going yet.
Yeah, but, there's not going to be, barbarians at the gates and shit. It's just going to be...
so sure about that?
Yeah, we're geographically...
You remember Hurricane Sandy? When people couldn't get gas for 2 weeks?
Yeah, but, they're not going to be, foreign barbarians ripping up... It's just going to be, I don't know. It's going to be some Mad Max shit.
Mm.
Mad Max, the first movie, where, society hasn't completely collapsed. There's a scene. This is how little the first Mad Max movie is like the rest of the series. There's a scene in the Mad Max movie where Max takes his baby daughter out. Not Max. Max's wife takes her daughter out, their baby daughter out, and they get ice cream. Now, if you've never seen the first Mad Max movie and your idea of Mad Max is it's in some desert and it's weird mutated people wearing hockey pads and pots and pans and World War I helmets, bizarre aviator goggles and shit, and driving around in dune buggies with spikes on them. Wait, they have ice cream? But the first Mad Max movie is it's not that post-apocalyptic. It's more there's still society. The first Mad Max movie, Mad Max is a cop. That's how much society is still there.
Right.
There's still cops.
Yeah. That's what it'll be. There'll be a United States of America, but it'll be less and less relevant.
Well, there's still France was a major world power.
Right.
In a way that England was, but hasn't lost its relevance as much as France has.
Yeah.
France, Spain. Spain, even better story. You know what happened to Spain? I don't know if this is true or not. I wasn't there, but it's a good story with a good moral, so I'll just stick to the narrative where it's probably the truth.
Okay.
So, this is what happened to Spain. They were a world power. They were one of the richest, most powerful nations in Europe, and Europe being what it was at the time, they had dominance over the rest of the humanities. Anywhere the Europeans went, their technology...
Mm-hmm.
was... So, the Spanish, they were one of them. Now the Spanish are... what are the Spanish? I guess they have some good filmmakers. I guess, some of them, play soccer or something.
Have good food. And they're very sexually open culture, from what I hear. Spain is very...
these days, most of their influence on the world is the fact that everybody... in south of the United States of America speaks their language, except for the ones that speak Portuguese. But that's their big influence on the world is that Spanish is still a majorly dominant language. It's the second most spoken language in this country, probably.
Right.
But it's not spoken that by Spanish people. The way that English is the number one, but how many people speaking English are actually English?
Yeah.
I'm not English. You're not English. And maybe somewhere back there's like an ancestor or something, but like you're like Polish and Italian. I'm Italian, Irish, Russian Jew, some other sundry things, maybe an English person in there somewhere, I don't know, but I'm not English, but I speak English.
Yeah.
Spain's, that's been Spain's real influence. So what happened to Spain was they came over to the New World and they were obsessed with gold. And they tortured and they murdered and they genocided in the name of getting gold. The other thing about gold is, right, gold, it's not magical. It's not like gold is valuable because, like, it has intrinsic value.
No.
Gold is valuable because there's not a lot of it.
Yeah.
If your entire economy is based around gold, and suddenly you come back with a shit ton more gold, how valuable is it? Your economy collapses.
Yeah.
You're never the same again. You're Spain. That was the real revenge. You know, they always the joke that you know, diarrhea is Montezuma's revenge.
Ah.
But Montezuma's real revenge, and the revenge of all the people in the New World who were wronged horribly in the name of gold, is that, I mean, it's like some like Tales from the Crypt story. You know, they come back with the gold, and then like, no, their economy collapses. The very thing they did is their cause of their ruination.
Yep.
You know, I'm trying to think of a good Crypt Keeper pun, but none are like, well, that was a grave error.
Somebody should have expanded to them.
Exactly. But it's true, like, that's what happened to the Spanish, and that's, you know, so they're gone. The French, I don't know, I guess, like, World War II happened to the French.
Yeah, right.
You know, but they, you know, and the French, they're another one that, like, still dominate culturally. You know, there's a lot of French movies and French music and French food and, like, but geopolitically, you know, they're up there, but they're not, like, right now it's like the United States, Russia, Korea, China, like, these are the countries that, like, actually dictate the geopolitical landscape.
Right.
Germany's coming back.
Definitely.
Israel. You know, these are the countries that, like, help shape.
The Korea thing, I don't know. I just don't see it as a real threat.
Oh, me neither.
If this guy tries anything,
yeah, no,
even China's got to give way to a nuclear threat and say, all right, enough is enough.
Yeah, no, I mean, there might be... The worst that'll happen is somebody somewhere will get nuked before they're wiped off the map.
Right.
But we've nuked people on Earth before, and hey, human race kept going. That was a sad story. It sucks. But like, the tapestry of human history is dripping. It is so soaked in blood.
Yeah.
It's fucked up. But I have to imagine, as like I said the other day, I have to imagine that that's just the path of emerging intelligence.
We'll just have to have less people die the rest of that week.
But, you know, other than, yeah, maybe somebody will, but, like, that's the thing, is that, like, there's no real threats. I mean, other than human beings.
Yeah, what about giant rocks in space?
Yeah, well, we should be getting out into space so that we don't have all our eggs in this one basket.
Well,
that's true.
Be able to deflect those asteroids.
Yeah, but it's also, like, it's good evolutionary strategy that we should not be, the entirety of the gene pool should not be in one potentially vulnerable location.
Sure.
Like, we know enough to keep, you know, like, the president and the vice president and the whatever, like, all in, like, separate buildings so you can't just take them all out at the same time.
Yeah.
But, like, we don't know, like, there's always one person in the chain of command who isn't there. Or at least so the story is. I don't know if that's true or not. I've never really done the research, but it's certainly a conceit in fiction. But we don't know not to keep all of humanity on this one planet.
Well, we know that. We're just not there yet.
Well, there's a lot of people that have no interest in leaving the planet.
Surviving in space is, right now, terribly difficult.
Yeah, well, it's like, I mean, we have an up. You know, the first fish that crawled out of the ocean
Yeah, we'll redesign the human physical form first, and that'll enable us to adapt easily into living in space colonies.
Well, I think that
or on planets.
It's also just possible that we'll have to part of the way that we'll be able to survive in space is we'll just have to beat death first. Once that's one of those, I don't talk about the idea that much because it's like I know that people really aren't even ready to hear it or consider it yet.
Yeah.
But so much of everything that we consider this is the way it is and this is the way it's always been is based around the contingency of survival or death.
Yeah.
Like, well, you have to work for a living. Why do you have to work for a living? Well, because you got to eat. Why do you got to eat? Because you'll starve. You'll die. Well, you need to have a job. You got to take care of your kids. They'll die.
Right.
Well, you got to, we need to have a good military or else our enemies will attack us. We'll die. Well, it's going to be hard to go out into space. There's no air there. We'll die. There's a limitation on us.
Yeah.
Like, why do you have to do a job that maybe sometimes you don't like doing, or maybe always don't like doing if you had a job like mine, and you have to do it anyway? Why? There's a limitation placed on you.
Right.
It's because, well, I need to get these biosurvival tickets. Money.
But then if you can't die, do you still get to choose to die, or do you just keep living in this?
I don't know. I mean, I assume that at first, what'll happen at first is probably going to be we'll just lengthen lifespan and lengthen lifespan indefinitely. But like, if you get shot in the head, you're still dead.
Right.
If you didn't get shot in the head, maybe you'll be around forever. But like, if somebody chainsaws, sticks, fire poker through your heart or whatever, you're still dead.
So are you going?
Like, we'll beat cell death first, pre-programmed death.
Yeah.
The fact that like you age and die,
right.
That'll get beat first. But like, still, if someone shoots you in the head or cuts your head off, or bleeds you out or drowns you or throws you in a volcano, like you'll still die. Like the destruction of the physical form from non-internal sabotage.
So that's my question. So dying is not preferable to sticking around here in this physical reality.
Well, here's the thing: is that like the ultimate thing at the end, that one thing that we all are, it's undying.
Right.
So somewhere between where we are now, where we're not that thing, and where we are, you know what I mean?
Yes.
But somewhere between the now when we're not that thing and the now where we are that thing, death has to be a line that gets crossed.
Okay.
A hurdle that gets conquered.
Okay.
Somewhere along the way. It's kind of like the way that, like, that one thing at the end, it's neither going to be male nor female. It's not going to have a fucking gender. That's some biological bullshit.
Right.
So, like, between now and then, all of our rigid concepts of gender are going to have to break down.
Yes.
Which is what's happening right now.
Starting. And once we could change the biology.
Yeah, it's like, I remember I was in 7th grade, and this kid asked me, like, do you think God is white skin or black skin? And I'm like, I don't think God has skin. I don't think he's a person. Like, you're asking me how much melanin the God's epidermis, like, do you think that, like, he's some guy, like, walking around? Is that... I don't even believe in that kind of God. Like, the abstract whatever.
Right.
Like, I don't even believe in that, but, like, I really don't believe in, like, a God that is a person. Like, well, only the men can join the priesthood because God was a man, so priests are more like... God has a penis? God has chromosomes? I made a Velociraptor meme once that said, I was made in God's image. Oh, does he have useless tonsils too? But, God doesn't have any of that shit. Like, whatever kind of God there actually is, has to be something so abstract. It's like Santa Claus. Like, if you want to believe that Santa Claus is real, I don't recommend believing Santa Claus is real. But if you do want to believe that Santa Claus is real, then the only way you can reconcile Santa Claus being real with the reality of, like, well, I know that Mom and Dad buy my presents, put them under the tree, is, oh, well, Santa Claus is, like, he's this abstract spirit.
Right. That's how my mom sold it to me.
He's this abstract spirit, and, like, when your parents go to Service Merchandise and buy you Rock'em Sock'em robots and wrap it, they are being... A portion of them is the aspect of Santa Claus in that moment. You know, some like Jorge Luis Borges, like everyone.
It's true. Santa Claus is a meme.
Everyone that reads a line of Shakespeare is Shakespeare. Borges said. So some kind of like you can make it like some kind of, but then you have completely moved away from. There's a guy. He lives in the North Pole. Red wardrobe. Rides a sleigh. You've moved completely away from everything that is actually Santa Claus.
Let me ask you a question. Does Santa Claus have white skin or black skin?
I don't know, but he has a white beard. Actually, that's not true. In Grant Morrison's Klaus, I should really give you that to read. It's this badass... what?
You did.
Oh, good. Well, there was a new story.
Oh, okay.
Did you read it?
No, I haven't.
Oh, you're a sucker. Santa Claus... the person who will become Santa Claus is this, like, badass, broad-chested, brown bar, big beard, long hair, like, you know, looking kind of like some kind of, like, you know, Thor meets Conan meets...
Did you ever read the Conans?
No. No, I always kind of meant to, but that's one that's too sprawling for me, like, do I start with the pulp novels? Do I read the pastiche novels? Do I read the Marvel comics? Do I read the millions of other Conan comics there have been since then? Do I read, like, it's just one of those things that, like if I'd never gotten into Sherlock Holmes, I might not have gotten into Sherlock Holmes. Because it's like, wow, like, which, like, even though there's not a lot of Sherlock Holmes text, just a lot of representations in popular media. And unpopular media. It's about the ways that fiction and reality blur into one another. That's a subject that I've always been fascinated with, because you know, we all live in a story in our head, but then we need other stories. I don't know, I guess it sounds more profound in my head than when I said it out loud, but it's true. Like, fiction and reality, they're not really the diametrically opposed things that we think they are, or cast them as.
Right. They inform each other.
Well, yeah, absolutely. They inform each other and they blur into one another. It's like, you know, like how, like, on, in, like, the spectrum, it's never like, oh, well, this is where it stops being red and starts being, I don't know, orange or whatever.
Yeah.
It just blends. And actually, orange doesn't even exist. Orange is just the blend point between when it stops being red and starts being yellow.
Yeah. Right. And the visible light spectrum is the blend point where between microwaves and X-rays.
Exactly. There's nothing ever just changes from one thing into something else. There is no, like, sharp division. Maybe down on the quantum scale, where, like, well, it either is this quanta or this quanta.
Right.
But I don't even know if that's true. I'm not a fucking quantum physicist. I don't know anything about quantum physics. I think that a lot of people don't know about quantum physics and think that they do.
Yeah, totally. You can really only understand it in terms of metaphors.
Yeah, well, that's everything.
Yeah.
Everything is a metaphor for everything else.
You are literally a metaphor.
Yeah, exactly. Nothing is literal. But everything is metaphorical. Or some things are literal, but they're just not literally true. Nothing's literally true. Everything is metaphorically true. That's how you can believe in nothing and everything at the same time.
Right.
Like, oh, the world was created in 7 days. Yeah, well, there's a metaphor where that works. Was it created in 7 24-hour period of times? That seems absurd. I don't know. I wasn't there. It could have happened that way. I don't know. Fuck do I know? I mean, it's very easy to say, you know, creationism is dumb. Evolution is very obviously, you know, I don't fucking know. Like, maybe, like, you know, maybe God's real clever. He, like, makes things look like evolution to fool us. Yeah. Oh, you know, he planted those dinosaur bones there to test you.
So are you still buying the human evolution was a steady progression from primitive to civilized, and it's just been a...
It's not... Okay, the narrative I like... I guess that is like because it's clean and because it's more optimistic. The narrative I like is that... So humanity's like, I don't know, like what, 200,000 years old? Is like the species...
Maybe older at this point. But
yeah, but just, it's like around... Last time I researched it, I'm pretty sure the figure was roughly around, say, 200,000.
Okay.
Civilization as we know it is like 10, 15,000 of that?
Yeah, but what if it's not?
That's what I'm saying. I know, but I'm going to say...
yeah, you know where I'm going. But.
I do, but let me stick to this narrative, and then we can discuss the flexible points in that. And why one may or may not be the preferable narrative, or the true narrative, or who the fuck knows what's true. So... It's like, you imagine it this way. It's not like when we became humans, like when the genes finally locked into what they are now, and we stopped being whatever was, Australopithecus or whatever, the Neanderthals, whatever was that immediately preceded us, Homo erectus, whichever. I don't remember which one we emerged directly from. I don't remember the family tree of Homo. It's not like the moment we became human, we're like, all right, let's start speaking a language and building cities.
Yeah.
We were still animals, clever animals. But, like, it would have taken some kind of impetus or stimulus that when something happened that was externally imposed on us, presumably externally imposed. I mean, I don't mean, like, by, like, aliens or whatever, but just, like, even, like, there's a theory that, at some point, a bad batch of mushrooms, say... And the psychedelic awakening of that kick-started us stopping being just... We were already Homo sapiens sapiens. And we could have been Homo sapiens sapiens for, like, 150,000 years of that 200,000 years.
Sure.
We could have been it for, 190,000 of those 200,000 years. In terms of, like, species, 190,000 years is a short... Alligators have been alligators for... millions of years.
Right.
Trees have been like other than like the things that we've bred and whatever, the things that are human created artifacts, like many of the plants in the world are like, yeah, they've been basically that for like the last million years or whatever. They're not, that's an eye blink in the life of the species. But because we had the potential, for whatever reason, the brains that this configuration had the potential at some point. Could have been earlier. Like I said, I'm not dogmatic about this is the first time it's happened.
Right.
It just seems to me more optimistic that this is the first time it happened and not, well, we set ourselves back and we set ourselves so back that there's barely even a trace that it happened. That seems... I mean, if it's true, then you have to just accept that. But if there's wiggle room between a living reality where humanity has been... not a steady evolution. I mean, it's like a spiral. Like, every time around is less time than the last time.
Yeah.
But, so for 190,000 years, we were just clever animals. And then, for the next... Of those 10,000 years, it's like 8,000 years until, we're really... at least 5,000 years is like... 5,000 years ago is when, like, all the major... early civilizations like Babylon, Egypt, and the beginnings of China and shit. That's like maybe about the early days of the Old Testament being written is about 5,000 years ago. And then, even still, like, well, it wasn't then until... Then, it wasn't really until, like, the Middle Ages that, like, science really started getting... right past the Middle Ages, I mean, obviously, like the Renaissance. Like, science really starts getting developed. There have been, attempts at it early, but, like, it's steam engines when it comes steam engine time. Charles Fort said that. The world wasn't really ready for science yet, so the Greek philosophers poking around at things that would eventually become science didn't really go anywhere. And, like, some dude in Greece invented the steam engine. Hero of... That was his name. Hero of... I can't remember where, some Greek place. Invented the steam engine.
That's nuts.
But it wasn't time for a steam engine yet, so everyone was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I can't really do anything with it, though.
Yeah.
Like, it didn't lead to, like, you know, some weird alternate universe where steampunk happens in ancient Greece. It led to, like, oh, that's an interesting novelty.
Right.
But when the world was actually ready for a steam engine was the era of steam. The era that steampunk harkens back to. Just took another, 3,000 years to get to that point. So it wasn't until, like, say 500 years ago that, science and... I mean, humans didn't develop, like, in drawing the concept of perspective until, like, the 1500s.
Really?
Like, the idea of, the lines converging on the vanishing point and how everything... So, like, you can have, like... I mean, if you look at, like, medieval art or anything earlier than that, it's flat. Buildings are just, a simple, rectangle with diagonals coming off of it to show the plane of the top or the bottom or whatever. But they were all flat and going the same direction. And it wasn't... And then it wasn't until, the 1800s that industrialization and mechanization really took off. And then it wasn't until the 20th century that the age of the computer really took off, and postmodern types of thinking, and really the beginning of the end of religion. And, like, we've been on a path this whole time. And if just we stay on that path, then we get to the better world and the better place.
Right.
There's another narrative that says that we started all that shit and we were on that path, and then at some point, for some reason, everything reset itself.
Well, yeah, the asteroidal impact about 11,800 years ago, where we moved into the orbit of a comet, which we're moving into right now, and it was actually two impacts about 1,500 years apart. And those impacts, not that we had, you don't have to go the full-blown, we were an advanced technological society with like Atlantis. And
and the thing is, like, the problem I have with that kind of thinking is, like, their kinds of advanced society aren't the directions advanced society seem to go in.
No, when we say advanced, we mean that they understood astronomy. They understood the geography of the planet and how you could derive that from the motions of the stars. It was actually very scientific.
Yeah.
So it was this high advanced wisdom connected to the stars that got preserved. And so when humanity got wiped out, those few pockets of people that had that advanced knowledge kept it around and disseminated it to the others who did get rebooted. There was actually a huge reboot for humanity. So when you talk about the primitive humans, the proto-humans, like, yeah, there was all of that. I just don't think it was within the last 12,000 years. It began much longer before that.
How much earlier? That's the thing that I...
Yeah.
It just seems to me like it's plausible that because we were basically just animals, it's not like, oh, well, it wasn't the first humans, but the next generation that began... Like, it seems like there was this thing in... Did you ever finish watching Babylon 5?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, there was this thing in Babylon 5 that always kind of bothered me, and it bothers me more now that I'm more, like, able to see how flawed the show was in a lot of ways. But, like, there's a character on the show, I can't quite remember his name now, and it's like, he's supposed to be the first being in the galaxy. Not of the first beings, but, like, the first time that life ever emerged anywhere, and he's still alive.
Right.
I'm like, so it didn't evolve to that point? Like, life just immediately... And he's, like, already, like, super enlightened and has great abilities beyond any of the other life forms in the galaxy, and, like...
So it just... Another galaxy?
It just started that way. It didn't have to build to it.
Yeah.
Like, there wasn't, like, on his world a fish crawling out of an ocean, or a primordial soup where molecules start forming into DNA change. Just like, baboosh! Here's the first guy! Like, Lorien, his name was, or something like that. Sound like a fucking Tolkien character.
Right.
Might not have been Lorien, but it was something like that. And, like, that's not the way my world works.
No, yeah, this is more just... We had more knowledge than we realized before the impact. And so it was like starting over. It wasn't exactly starting over from scratch.
So it's kind of like a worse version of the Middle Ages.
It's just instead of a straight upward, line of progression, you had bumps in the road. That's all.
I mean, there's already like things like the Dark Ages was a big bump in the road.
Yeah.
So this, if you want to say like, it happened earlier, and then there were other more severe versions of things like the Dark Ages, I can totally fit that in my model. I would have to study the archaeology and whatever to decide whether it's necessary.
I'm not going to get into all that, but that's the thing is these.
But I can absolutely fit that in
We
my
didn't
model.
unearth the structures that convinced us of this until recently, like as recently as 2005, 2007, with Göbekli Tepe.
And
the geological evidence was there.
There is shit like the water damage on the Sphinx.
But also the nuclear glass that's spread out all over the North American continent.
And that there is a degree to which, like, some of the out-of-place artifacts could be explained by...
Yeah.
But they can be explained by any number of things. Like, I don't know how the world works. I don't know what's real. Like, maybe, they dug up this ancient battery. Well, maybe a time traveler dropped it. I don't fucking know. Maybe an alien dropped it.
That's why it's fun to have an open mind and consider all possible theories.
Yeah, I mean...
Get the most complete picture you can.
Yeah, and then you don't hold on to your model so religiously that you are blind to anything that doesn't fit into it.
Because the map is not the territory.
Yeah, we're map-making machines.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a brutal oversimplification. But we're map-making machines. The better our maps are, the more our maps actually reflect the territory. The better served.
In some ways, I think the maps are creating the territory.
Well, that's the thing about being human.
Yeah. Well, that's what you did with It's the Crew.
Yeah. Yes. Well, It's the Crew was, Chuck D once memorably referred to rap as the black man's CNN. This is back when that wasn't laughable.
Right.
Because it's like, well, we don't have any media outlet except for here's these people telling you what life's really like there.
Yeah.
At some point, it turned into the black lifestyles of the rich and famous, and I don't know what the fuck it is now. But that it's kind of that's kind of like what It's the Crew was like. It was like it wasn't real, but it was all true.
Wait, tell our listeners what It's the Crew.
Oh,
is.
It's the Crew. No, It's the Crew was this, I don't know, webcomic, I guess. Crudely photoshopped pictures of me and my crew, Marcus Aurelius over here, and other people, the legendary Attila Zendrodi, Chris Palermo. That's a good man. He was in one of them.
Yes, he was. Yes, he was.
And there's the picture of Mark with Old Dirty Bastard. That was a real picture.
I mean, but what did you just one day decide, I'm going to take pictures of everybody and just put speech balloons on them?
Okay, I was inspired by, there was this earlier this thing where they were telling stories about Mr. T.
Okay.
And they'd be these crudely photoshopped comic booky adventures of Mr. T and how his van is fast, fool, and like punching people into space, and they were crude and charming and absurd, and I thought it was a really interesting medium, so I thought, well, I'll just do that. But since I for whatever reason in my life, basically everybody that I roll with is some absurd, larger than life epic character.
Yeah.
That I can put together into like a Justice League type.
Right. Which is what it became.
And I was inspired by Curb Your Enthusiasm, the show Larry David made about the adventures of Larry David, starring Larry David as Larry David, but it wasn't Larry David's real adventures. It wasn't like, oh, well, this is like, it wasn't like, you know, these are the actual things that actually happened to me that I'm cathartically working out for my TV show. He would just, like, heartlessly, you know, write himself as this horrible, selfish, short-minded character, and how all these horrible things happen to him because of his own flaws. And then he'd go portray that character as himself, like, every week. It was amazing. It was hard to watch. It was, like, painful. It was so cringy.
Yeah.
I mean, just, like, so cringy, but, like, brilliant. And I was inspired by the Wu-Tang Clan. Because the Wu-Tang Clan were, like, a bunch of friends that were like, wow, we're all, like, larger-than-life epic characters. Let's just start speaking in our own language of slang. Like, oh, now we're from Shaolin. And, you know, whatever. Like, I don't really want to get into Wu-Tang slang. I don't have enough time left in my life to explain exactly how this rap is like ZD. But so I just started telling fictional accounts of the adventures of me and my friends. And they were all fictional, but they were all true.
And brilliant.
Privately, I'm inclined to think the same, but, you know, modesty for fens.
Yeah.
They were ahead of their time, probably. I think I probably would have gotten somewhere more doing something like that now, just that now I'm old and tired. And I don't have that in me anymore.
You have a book to finish.
Yeah, I don't have that in me either. Let me just make some more rose cuttings and die. Rose cuttings. It's crazy to just take a piece of this plant and stick it in the ground and then, like, hey, it's its own plant now. Why can't we work that way?
Give me a new limb, give me new organs.
Well, we'll have all that stuff. I don't know how, maybe cloning.
Yeah, then there's more responsibility to do something with your life because you have more time.
Yeah, but there's more time to do it.
Right.
Like, think about it.
Less pressure.
If you live an infinite number of years, you have an infinite number of years to figure out what the fuck it is you're supposed to be doing, another infinite number of years to do it in, and then an infinite number of years past that to reflect on what you've done. Because infinity isn't something, it's an infinite.
Yeah.
You take infinity away from infinity and there's infinity left. Unless you're talking about, like, trans-finite numbers, we are not. So you live forever, like, okay, maybe it takes you 36 billion years, which is longer than, like, I think maybe the universe has been around now. Maybe it takes you 36 billion years. I don't know, maybe I'm completely wrong on how old the universe is, guys.
14 billion, I think?
Yeah, I think something like that. Longer than 5,000 years.
Yeah.
That way. Yeah. 4004 BC, October 23rd. It was a Tuesday. Fucking Bishop Usher. So maybe it takes you 36 billion years to figure out what it is you're supposed to be doing, but so what? You still got infinity left.
Right.
Maybe it takes you 360 billion years to actualize it. So what? You've still got infinity left. That's why it's so important that we beat death. Beat death, beat space, become gods.
Sky's the limit.
The fabric of reality is the limit. I have a theory, I don't know if it's true, obviously, I have no way of testing it. I have a theory that the laws of physics are, they're kind of more like guidelines. Mm-hmm. Like, right now the universe is asleep. It's a little bit awake through us, but mostly it's asleep. And before there was us, it was basically completely asleep. I mean, unless there's aliens or whatever, but then there was still, presumably, a time there was no intelligent life anywhere in the universe. And then there was a first one, and the first one may as well be us, until I have better evidence to the contrary. But either narrative works.
Right.
And the universe is completely unconscious, and the only way it can ever get to develop is if it sticks within certain physical guidelines. It's kind of like, well, if you toss and turn a lot in your sleep, maybe you strap yourself down before you go to bed. Or, the people, like the thing on the side of the hospital bed, the rail that can go up so you can't, maybe if you there's a possibility that you'll cause yourself injury while you're asleep, you restrain yourself somehow. That's what the laws of physics are.
Until you're able to...
Well, we need to have, if it goes too much this way, everything is so orderly that there's no room for novelty. And if we go this way, then everything is so chaotic that there's no room for any structure. So you need to have it, within... You need a physical substrate that can host intelligence. So there needs to be certain types of matter that operate in certain types of way, and the potential to have, long-chained replicating molecules, the blah, 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 blah.
And so on.
Like, you need to have all that just to even get to a point where, as a universe, you can actualize your intelligence fully throughout your entire selfness.
Damn.
So, while you're completely asleep, you have these restraints in place, like the speed of light, and the laws of thermodynamics, and these equations, but maybe as you wake up, you don't need them anymore.
Right.
That's my final argument against people that are like, well, that's just never going to work because that's just not the way the universe works. I don't know that the universe is always going to work that way. I don't know if the sun's coming up tomorrow. I assume the sun's coming up tomorrow. Then, based on the fact that it's cyclical and it always comes up before, and nothing seems to have changed, I have no reason to assume it's not coming up tomorrow.
Right.
But I don't actually know that it is. I don't know what's real, what isn't. Like, I'm just trying to explain things to myself.
That's the importance of being in the moment.
But it's also important to contextualize the moment into the map. I mean, you don't need a map, I guess. I guess you, this is the problem I have with like the Buddhists, like that, I mean, not the Buddhists as a whole, but like a certain way of thinking that, everything is already as it's supposed to be. Well, then why do things keep changing? Don't rail against that which you cannot change. Well, things change. Maybe don't get so uptight if you can't actually affect it, but don't just blindly accept things either.
It's the change itself you have to accept. You have to accept that nothing is permanent.
Yeah, that's a tough one too. Mm-hmm. It's not just peace.
I was reading Siddhartha again recently, and he's talking to the ferryman about the river and how the river changes constantly. It's never the same, but yet it's still there. It's a river. You can see the beginning, you can see the end, but it's still just constantly flowing, and it's never the same.
Yeah, the way is a labyrinth with many paths but one exit.
So tell me about the Yard project. How long has it been going now?
Since just over 2 years.
How did it start?
Well, this yard has never been maintained.
Right.
And, it was maintained the lawn was mowed or leaves were raked or whatever, but it was never, it was just kind of allowed to go wild. There's all kinds of areas where the ground is just so compacted and dry that nothing ever grows there. Not even weeds or grass or anything. It's just these ugly bare patches. It looked like an abandoned, like I said, the lawns were mowed and the leaves were raked, but everything else was to seed.
Right.
For 20 years. And I guess this was right after I quit Stables.
How long had you been in Stables?
Oh God, too long. I mean, that doesn't really say anything because it's just working retail, I think it was very important because working in a service position puts you in the position where you understand how this society treats its servants.
Ah. And then you just had enough.
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, it turned out I had some kind of incident with my eye where I lost use of some of the optic nerve. And I'm like, if this is going to be what the rest of my life is weird shit like this happening. Like, I'm not going to also wear a fucking apron to work. Like, that's...
Do you still have the loss of vision in the eye?
A little bit, but I don't really see it anymore.
Okay.
It's just like a, it's like a blind spot, except it's a blind spot that, since it's not naturally like accounted for, it still appears in your vision. It's like a really strong after image.
Gotcha.
And it just, I've had it for like really only been 2 years. I've had it for 2 years. And eventually the brain just learns to take the data from that section of visual field from the other eye and just kind of, you know what I mean? Like,
infer it and fill in the gaps. Yeah.
Part of the reason that you have two eyes is so that if one of them starts reporting funny data, then you still got one.
Right. Okay, so you quit Staples.
And then, there have been, I don't know, we just started buying plants and keeping them in pots. And then we redid this plot in the back here, so there'd be a place to put the pots and, make it look nice. And then nothing lived in the pots over the winter, so the next year we started planting more and more things in the ground, and that meant having to recondition the ground. And then this year we spent most of the time just moving around the plants that we planted last year because we were just getting them into a spot. Like, here's a spot that won't be that difficult to dig into, so let's just go here for right now to get it into the ground.
Yeah.
Not, well, this is where we intend this to be its permanent, like...
Now you have a whole vision for the yard.
Yeah. Now we're actually moving into, like, the landscaping section of... And then also we just, we started doing rose cuttings.
Looks beautiful.
Yeah. I have 3 conditions for one of my plants. Has to be a perennial, because I don't have it in me to deal with, like, hey, here's this thing and it grows and it's beautiful. Oh, now it's dead. I get a goldfish if I want that.
So it has to be a perennial.
It has to be something that, like, at least in principle, there's a chance that, like, it will outlive me.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, not just something like, oh, it was there and now it's gone.
Yeah.
And now there's just a hole where it was. Oh, you can put something else in that hole. Yeah, but you can never quite put something else in that hole. If you've noticed this becoming more and more broadly metaphorical the further I get out.
Yeah, I mean,
that's not unintentional.
Getting a little personal, because I noticed you started doing all the yard stuff after your mom passed away.
Yeah, well, it started the year... It started her last year.
Okay.
She got the notification of the cancer in December of 2014, and we started doing this, like, ordering the first plants in, like, May, June of 2015. So she didn't die until that December.
It seems like those things are somehow connected, though.
Well, I mean, it's just more, like, in a broad tangential, they're both symptoms of the same things.
Okay.
One of the other reasons I left my job was because I knew that, it was going to become more difficult for Mom. And that, my father can't always be here. So I didn't want there to be anything where, oh, well, there should have been somebody in the house.
You were always here taking care of her.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't actually have to take care of her much, but just like I was here to keep watch.
Right.
You know, she was still like a functioning human being then. It was, you know, it wasn't like it was at the end. But, you know, just like if something happened or if she fainted or, you know, if she needed something so that she wouldn't have to get up and get it.
Mm-hmm. Which is really just a more vigilant version of what you've been doing with her whole life.
Yes. Yeah, well, my mom was sick my whole life, so...
Yeah.
But ironically, a lot of what we've done with this yard, either I wouldn't have been able to do if she was still alive, or I would have had to have argued with her on.
Really, was
She would have come around and seen, like, if after I won the argument and done it, she would have come to me, like, you know, 6 months later or the next year and say, you know, you were right about.
Right.
That's just the way she was. Like, she was very, I have inherited this characteristic a little bit, maybe more than a little bit, a automatic resistance to ideas that did not generate from within oneself.
Oh, yeah, sure. Sure.
So, you know, it would be like, and because I have it too, we were always, you know, we could never agree on anything because my idea was always, well, that's not her idea, and her idea was, well, that's not my idea.
Yeah, but you would have been the one to go, and you were the one to actually go out and do the work in the yard. Yeah. So that's, you would have won just based on that.
Yes. Well, that's the thing, is that, like, I mean, unless she gave me a direct order, no, I don't like that, you must get rid of that. Like, right. I would have just gone out and planted the things I wanted to plant anyway. That's always how I've been. But there's a lot of things that either maybe she wouldn't have liked the plants, or she wouldn't have liked the direction we've taken the landscaping in. I don't know.
So apart from not working, which I envy you, and working on the yard, which I also kind of envy in a good way, you also haven't gone out much.
No, I don't. No, it's not. Well, there's people out there, man. Everywhere you go, there's like, they're like fucking. Yeah. You can't swing a dead cat.
Like, you went down to Vineland to see Diane at one point.
Oh God, that was even like in 20. Was that in 2016? Yeah, last time I was down to see Diane was in October. Yeah. Which is, since it is now basically August.
Now, how about Attila? Have you been up to Attila's?
I went to Attila's. It was for the first time ever in, like, the 5 years he'd been there or whatever. Right. In, like, December, maybe. So, again, like, 8 months ago. Yeah. Yeah, no, I haven't this year. The furthest I've actually made it out, I don't even know.
Wow. I mean, I can tell you that I'm on my second apartment, so I think, like, my whole last apartment you've never actually been in.
Wait, was that the one where you lived in the bootleg-ass housing projects?
No. That was the one right before that, yeah. Okay, the other one was in Bloomfield.
I was in the bootleg-ass... Oh, wait, that was the one where you had the asshole neighbor.
Yes, in the attic.
The fucking Italian guy that, like, smoked cigars or something. He didn't like you smoking cigarettes.
Yeah, there was... No, he didn't smoke cigars. He just was...
I just like that story.
He had been there for years. He was original Italian generation. He slowly watched his neighborhood become a fucking noise zone.
Well, I guess I'd be bitter, too, because I'm kind of watching that happen to my neighborhood.
Right.
But, you know, I'm only a quarter Italian, so it's okay.
Yeah. So we're going on, like, I think 3 years since you've come to visit.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of not really...
Well, and I'm just as guilty because
I've become
this is what, like, the second time out of a year that I've been up here. Like, I come up for Noel Moss pretty regularly, usually once in the summer, and then the rest of the time spent saying, I'm going to go up to Noli's.
Yeah. No, I just, I find myself becoming, I don't want to say exactly a hermit, because I go out to the grocery store and shit. Right. Like, I still live in a house and wear clothes. Yeah. But I just find myself becoming more and more of a recluse. Like, there's not really anything for me out there. Like, I don't really fit into the social world in any, like, meaningful way.
I still feel that way even where I am. I tend to stay home and not go out and interact with people.
So, other than going out to get basic needs like food and necessities, I don't really have a lot of use for the outside world.
Do you get... I mean, I don't know. I guess when I get like that, and I'm like that all the time, where I'll just choose to be alone, like, do you ever start to miss the friendships the way we used to have them, where we used to all hang out more, we had more of a solid crew?
I mean, yes and no. It just seems like, oh, well, that was just a different portion of my life.
Yeah.
Like, it seems like, almost like it's a natural progression, because it's happened in every circle I was in, that, like, as you get older, the life you're creating for yourself becomes more, you know, friends drift apart, they don't see each other as often. My cousin comes over all the time. He's very upset because his life has not taken the turn he wanted it to. And when he's like, you know, when I was 17 years old, I had a million friends, and my worst problem was what party to go to that night.
Right.
And now I'm 30, and I don't, none of my boys have time for me anymore. And, you know, I used to have a million people show up on my birthdays, and now it was like 5 people. And, like, I just try to explain to him, like, that's just how life is.
Yeah, exactly.
And also, when I was 17, I wished I was dead, and I wish I was dead now. So which one of us really, like, you had a great 17-year-old life. I wished I've always been, like, in some kind of, like, internal self-created hell. So which one of us actually, like, am I actually advantaged because I didn't lose? Like, I wasn't at some position where, like, oh, these are the good times, and then just lose the rest? Lose it afterward, and after, like, forever afterward, like, reflect back on what I've lost? Or am I more disadvantaged because I didn't even get to have?
But you did, though.
I did, but I didn't. Because even in the good times, like, in the moment, like, I'll remember them as good times, but in the moment, my actual personal experience moment to moment is self-created internal hell.
Well, I remember it as self-created internal hell, but when I reminisce with people, they focus on the good times.
Oh, yeah,
so, like, they won't allow that narrative in, even though I know that narrative was going through my head during those moments.
Yeah, exactly. So you understand what I mean. Like, it's mostly, and probably there's a lot of people that are like that. I hope. I hope it's really not just us.
Right.
And everyone else is like, self-created internal hell. No. every waking moment is a joyous experience of growth and opportunity. You know, I find myself totally spiritual centered and at peace with the balance between me and the rest of the universe. Like, I really, really hope that it just... No, like, even the people that are like that, like, on the inside, it's moment-to-moment, self-created internal hell. I gotta hope.
Right.
I refuse to live in a universe so horrible that it lets those people have good lives.
It's peaks and troughs. Everybody has their ups and downs. But you seem the most calm and content I've ever seen you.
I cut the interacting with other people that turns my life into a self-created internal hell, like, down to, like, a minimum, because instead I have my life with myself. And sometimes that's a self-created internal hell, but sometimes it is self-created internal amusement.
Right.
I'm very good at entertaining myself. I find myself to be a very entertaining person. The project I started this year is I am finally trying to get my chess game off the ground. I've meant all my life, it's one of those tropes that, like, oh, you're a smart person, that means you're good at chess. Like, it's just one of those, like, lazy tropes in, like, you know, fiction and movies and shit that, like, you know, you show off how smart a person is, like, oh, there they are, playing chess, checkmate in 5 moves.
So you want to work on that trope?
Yeah, I just want to, like, it's been a secret shame of mine my whole life that everyone is always like, you're so smart, you're so smart, you're so smart, and then I'm not a very good chess player.
Ah, well.
I mean, I think I'm a decent one now. I win almost as many times as I lose.
Right.
But the thing I like about chess, and I don't know if there's another game that this can be said about, is that the flaws in my chess game. The problems that I need to resolve to improve my game are all isomorphic with are one-to-one with my personal flaws as like a human being in life. Like, I'm impulsive, I lose focus, and either become so concerned with short-term goals that I fuck up and lose in long-term, or become so obsessed with putting together some complicated long-term action that I miss some short-term danger. You know, focusing in too far or focusing out too far.
So playing, it's a good teaching experience.
You know, I'm terrified of failure. I'm terrified of making mistakes. And most of my life has just been easier to just not do anything. Because while that is, like, it's a meta mistake, like, not doing anything at all is its own mistake, but it's not the same mistake as doing something that's a mistake.
Wow.
So that's been my whole life. It's just been so much easier to just avoid my fear of failure by not doing anything. And then when I realize, wait, but that's what makes me a failure, I can say to myself, aha, but you see, because I'm intentionally doing it, I'm a success at it.
Damn.
And the point here is that human beings can rationalize anything. But yeah, I mean, all my life, like, I knew how the pieces moved. And then about 10 years ago, I started studying the game to try to learn the actual, you know, at least some rudimentary principles. Like, I finally understood the point and purpose of castling, and how to best develop knights and bishops, and, you know, possible good repeat opening moves, and a little bit.
Right.
You don't want the knights on the edge of the board. A knight on the rim is dim. That's what they say. It's a real rim job, Mark. Remember that time when we saw the South Park movie? And they're like, what's a rim job?
I just remember there was an abortion joke. Something about a rusty hanger. And I was the only one that laughed out loud in the entire theater.
I probably missed it because I was laughing at the last joke 5 seconds before.
Yeah, I remember for some reason.
That was my experience with seeing the South Park movie the first time, was that it was, you laughed so hard at a joke that you missed the next 3 jokes because they just came that fast.
Yeah.
And so you have to watch the movie like 4 times to actually hear every joke, or just be very stoic while you're watching it.
Right. Speaking of movies, we just saw Dunkirk. What'd you think of that?
I enjoyed Dunkirk. It was the Christopher Nolan-esque movie. Like, Christopher Nolan boiled off everything. I mean, you know, Insomnia was a remake. Prestige was an adaptation of a novel. The Batman trilogy were working with, you know, a adaptation of 75 years of Batman media.
Yeah.
I guess it wasn't 75 at the time. That's not the point. Well, it doesn't matter. Let's not think about it.
Interstellar.
Interstellar was original. Interstellar was in another way like the Christopher Nolan-esque movie ever. But this one, like, I guess maybe because he's off on Westworld now, Jonathan Nolan often is a co-writer.
Mm-hmm. His brother?
Yeah. It's so weird. One of them has a British accent, and the other has an American accent. But they're brothers.
That's weird.
But that anything, it's Christopher Nolan directed. It's just written by Christopher Nolan. There is no other mind working on it with him and helping him help shape it. So it's the Christopher Nolan. It's like everything excess has been boiled off, and it's just like this, like 2-hour whatever. Almost like operatic, almost like performance art, like a long music video.
What did you say about how it never seems like the scenes actually change? They just sort of blend in with the music. Like the music stays the same.
That's the thing is that the music, like the score, just the same piece of music will be playing between, and it won't stop. And when it cuts to one of the other scenes in another timeline, so it doesn't create. They don't feel like they're scene breaks. They just feel like it's a seamless cut of the continuing movement. And the whole movie kind of feels like a giant continuous movement. Like, it doesn't seem like it's broken up into acts or...
Right.
I mean, if I thought about it, I could probably apply the 3-act structure to it, but it doesn't, obviously represent something so structured. It just seems like it's a one continuous...
And then there's the whole thing with the 3 timelines. So you got one story that takes place over the course of a week.
One that
was the soldiers, right?
Yeah.
The infantrymen.
Then one that takes place over the course of a day, which is the civilian boat. And then one that takes place over the course of an hour, it's the fighter pilots.
Right. And they all coincide.
Yeah, well, Nolan loves multiple timelines. I think that he would do something involving... It seems to be like dead women, like people almost drowning or being submerged in water, like tilting your palate toward the blue. Christopher Nolan, it's one of his things. It seems to be one of his things because he keeps doing it over and over and over again. He is still, it's very entertaining to watch him because he's a guy with ideas.
Yeah.
He's not trying to make some blockbuster that our research shows that this is what'll show the most appeal in the Chinese market. And this here, our toy division tells us that, they're not making a movie around that at all. He's one of the only, filmmakers left. One of the only filmmakers left that, makes original movies. Mm-hmm. He's done a bunch of adaptations and whatever, too, and, properties. But, do original movies even, really, And even Dunkirk's not really an original movie because it's based on the historical event.
Yeah.
Real fiction is actually very hard to come by.
Why is that?
Well, because, ultimately, if you get around it, everything is based on reality. Even something in either a limited sense, even a character like Sherlock Holmes, Conan Doyle had a professor in med school or something that was kind of Sherlock, exhibited Sherlock Holmesian type deduction that inspired the idea of what if there was someone like that, but he fights crime. Even just a minimal respect like that, it's ultimately based on something in reality.
Like the Mad Hatter from Alice in Wonderland. There was a guy that owned a haberdashery, a hat shop?
Probably.
Yeah, and he was extremely eccentric, the Mad Hatter.
Or even in a broader sense, many fictional universes are based on life on Earth. Even things like Star Trek or whatever are based on a reality where there's an Earth with humans on it that's had human history. People quote Shakespeare. Other fucking alien races quote Shakespeare.
Right.
I think always annoyed me about Star Trek, and I understand why, but the way that they made Shakespeare such a big deal, but was he the only one in the entire galaxy?
They quoted other sources.
Yeah, not as much.
They definitely had Sherlock Holmes.
No, but show
up in Next Generation.
But again, what Shakespeare and Sherlock Holmes have in common? Mm-hmm. Still, it's just the human stuff. Was there no great, Klingon poet who was his own world's version of Shakespeare? Maybe, he did something completely different, but, just as influential and whatever. Wasn't there, a Vulcan...
I was just going to say, there was probably some Vulcan philosophers that they quoted a lot.
But I don't think there were. That's the thing. Like or maybe they make, they just make one up. Like, well, I believe, the Klingon poet said.
Well, what was it from Star Trek 4 where it was who said nothing unreal exists? And he says T. Planahoff majored in Vulcan philosophy, but nothing unreal exists is from A Course in Miracles. Like, that's where that phrase comes from. Nothing unreal exists.
Only nothing is impossible. That comes from a Grant Morrison comic. All-Star Superman.
All-Star Superman is fantastic. Would you say it's the...
If you only read one Superman comic, I wouldn't necessarily say that's your course of action, but if you only ever read one comic story about Superman, it's All-Star Superman. It sums up the character so well, and so many aspects of the kinds of stories he has, that if you never read anything else again, you'll still know. It's kind of like, if you only ever read one Uncle Scrooge comic, maybe you'd be best served reading, or one story, maybe you'd be best served reading The Life and Times of Scrooge McDuck, like Don Rosa. I would say that's not even as important as Only a Poor Old Man by Karl Barks. But a lot of people say Life and Times of Scrooge McDuck. The point is that, it's another one that, if you read this, you know everything about the character.
Right.
Also, fucking Uncle Scrooge is awesome. You heard they're doing a DuckTales reboot?
Yeah. Didn't it come out already or not yet?
Maybe it's just about to come out, or maybe it just came out.
Yeah.
It's definitely this year.
I love DuckTales.
I loved DuckTales too, but it was when I went back and read the original Barks comics that they were loosely based off of, not loosely based off of, he's the guy who invented Scrooge McDuck, and the idea of Scrooge and the nephews going off on wacky treasure hunting adventures.
Right.
Launchpad is a show creation. The Little Girl is a show creation.
Mm-hmm.
Probably an early attempt at inclusivity.
There was one episode...
The Butler is...
I remember...
a show creation.
Where they gave... Who was the one that turned into a robot, like the duck robot?
Gizmo Duck.
That was Gizmo Duck.
A show creation.
So they gave Gizmo Duck a device that would speed up his molecules to the speed of light, thereby slowing down the rest of time around him. And I remember thinking, wow, that's a really advanced concept to be putting into DuckTales at the time.
That's true.
And then the Beagle Boys steal the device, so they're able to bring their bodies to their molecules to the speed of light, freeze time, and start taking the gold out of the vault.
Oh, well, that's the thing about the Duck comics, the Duck stories in general, is that they involve all kinds of crazy ideas that seem like that's a little weird to be, seems a little advanced for kids, but what it's actually doing is reframing these ideas in ways that kids can appreciate and understand,
right,
and priming their mind for... There was...
That's what I feel like the entire 80s was for us.
A Don Rosa comic that was like Inception before Inception, if Inception was a comedy about talking ducks. Like, the Beagle Boys go into Scrooge's subconscious to pull information out of his memories, so they wind up having to, relive all these past events from his life, and then, Donald goes in after them.
That's nuts.
And they're doing it through, Scrooge's dreams.
Yeah.
And they keep running into Scrooge in the dreams, and Donald explains what's going on, but every time there's a new dream, Scrooge doesn't remember, and doesn't know that he's dreaming, so it has to all be explained to him again.
Oh my god.
And, there's a risk that, they're going to be trapped in his mind forever, and this was, I don't know, early 2000s or something. It wasn't this is a story from the 1950s or whatever, but, even still, it was, an Inception type thing before Inception.
Yeah.
There was one old Karl Barks story where they raise, a fallen ship or something by pumping in ping pong balls. Well, because they're all little self-contained pockets of air.
Yeah.
You pump in enough of them, it's got more air in it than it's got matter. And that sounds like, wow, that's so... I wonder if that would work in real life. And the answer is it does, because somebody that's, I guess, one of the ways they do that kind of shit now.
Wow.
Because somebody read it in a Karl Barks comic and said, let's try that shit.
That's insane. Again, fiction and reality blending together.
Yep. Really no difference. I mean, there is a difference, but the difference is that there is a distinction between reality and fiction, but the distinction is fictional.
Oh, explain spicy Trump memes.
Oh, spicy Trump memes. I found this fantastic site. I started finding these memes online that these people are either making or spreading or whatever. I don't really know much about the source. They seem to be... it's a one-joke thing. The joke is that Donald Trump is the father of his daughter's 3 children. I don't know if it's true or not. It does seem plausible. But, I mean, I don't know why it wasn't there. But, like, so one of them will be like, you know, when Donald Trump, something ridiculous. Like, when you, something ridiculous, but you're the father of your daughter's children. Type meme. But, I don't know, I haven't seen any in a while, so I don't know, maybe they got, like, I don't know, like, murdered by the FBI. Well, no, the FBI wouldn't have done it. Maybe it was,
What was great about it was not only the running joke,
writers.
but it was a accurate chronological record of every dumb thing that he's done.
I'm starting to think that maybe, like, I don't know, like Breitbart and the alt-right media must have done something to silence them or something.
Really?
I haven't seen them in a while. Like, I don't know what the hell's going on, but, like, I assume that it has to be, like, they were getting too close to the truth.
And if they were, would they be allowed to tell anybody that they were told to stop? Or would they just have to play it off?
I don't know. I think that maybe, I don't know what they'd do. I think maybe they'd just insinuate a lot of things without actually saying anything. Because that seemed to be mostly what they did. Like, I really liked them because the way they would do it would be like, you know, all the rumors on the street, and I've never actually heard this anywhere than this one place. I've never actually heard of this rumor anywhere else.
Okay.
Except, I mean, now I have. Now I guess, you know, everyone believes it or whatever. But, could be true. I don't know. I wasn't there. But it would start out with, you know, like, you know, I followed them on Twitter, and they would tweet to Trump asking him, like, how come the people on the street are demanding to know, how come you won't answer this question? Are you the father of your daughter's children? And he wouldn't even answer them, which seemed weird to me because, like, I mean, like, that guy, like...
Yeah.
I mean, you can't, like, random people on Twitter will say something and he'll be like, you're a loser, I have more money than you.
Right.
So, I mean, it must be that he was just so shook by the fact that somebody knew the truth or figured it out that he just had nothing, rendered speechless.
Yeah.
What other possible interpretations could there be?
Hoping it quietly goes away.
You know, I guess he just doesn't want to, you know, I mean, it would be very bad for his daughter.
I'm just surprised with all the rumors that one didn't catch on.
It would be very bad for his daughter, you know, and, I mean, you know, Jared Kushner, his daughter's husband, who has a prominent role in the White House now. I mean, if it turns out that, like, he's not even the father of her children, but that, like, the president is, I mean, that would be, like, that would destroy that family.
Yeah.
So it's probably better that they just keep their little secret a secret. I mean, presuming that's really what it is and it's not. I mean, I don't know, I wasn't there, it might not be true. But it could be true. That
Cannot confirm nor deny.
Could be, it does seem true, and a lot of people are talking about it now, that Donald Trump is the father of his daughter's children. There's another one, like, the universe is manifesting as being me, and the universe is manifesting as Donald Trump.
At the same time.
It's the tragedy of humanity. We are possibly the forefront of developed consciousness in the universe. It's possible that we're not. Don't know one way or the other, but there is a narrative where we are the crest of the wave of developing consciousness in the universe. And then you look at how stupid most of us are. And even the smart ones, how stupid they can be in moments. You know, that there's nothing that we know of anywhere in the universe that's more intelligent than we are. And we're not really that intelligent. I mean, we're the most intelligent thing there is, seemingly, so that does make us pretty intelligent. But on the other hand, when you envision what intelligence could be, it doesn't seem like we're very high on that meter. You know, it doesn't seem, and I guess like the very fact that we can envision and say, why are we so dumb, is demonstration of how intelligent we really are.
Yeah, and hopeful.
But you gotta be tired of being dumb.
Well, being dumb is not the same as being stupid. I think that stupid is a universal human condition. It's an evolutionary strategy. Like, we have to make stupid mistakes in order to learn from them and improve the situation.
Yes, but when the problem is there's a difference between making mistakes, because like everybody makes mistakes.
Right.
Anybody can make, because I mean, life is constantly play acting and experimentation and trying out and seeing what works. There is no actual rule book, so there's all kinds of, anybody can make a mistake. What stupid people do, or whatever, is keep making the same mistakes.
Yeah, I knew you were going there. Right.
Like, it was one of the things I would say to the people that I trained in the copy center. When, God help me, I was the one in charge over there. I will never give you hassle for making a mistake. I want you to make mistakes so that you can learn. I expect that you'll make mistakes. I mean, I guess I'd rather that you didn't make mistakes at all. Like, in an ideal, perfect world, we don't live in that.
Yeah.
I will never, ever give you hassle for making a mistake. I will always hassle you for making the same mistake again. Because if you make a mistake once, well, that's a learning opportunity. You make a mistake twice, it was a fucking learning opportunity. Did you not learn?
Wow, sometimes people have to repeat their mistakes.
Oh, yeah. Well,
a bunch of times, but...
Oh, yeah, I mean...
At a copy center, 2 or 3 times should be enough.
Yeah, no, seriously. And if you make a mistake, figure out how to fucking cover for it.
Well, and that's the other benefit of an extended lifespan, is you can make mistakes and have more time to ameliorate them, correct them, or let them just fade away into the past. Instead of, I made this mistake when I was 42, and I'm dead by 70.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I think you drop death out of the equation, everything will change. Can't imagine how exactly, because I don't... I can't... There's a lot of factors I haven't even thought of, or I'm not even going to bother trying to think of.
Yeah.
But a lot of things will change. I always envision it like death's going to become, at least for a while, like it is in like a Grand Theft Auto game, where you die and then the screen goes black and says wasted, and then you wake up in the hospital.
Right.
And you go back out and you start doing your thing again. And maybe you've lost whatever weapon you were carrying, and maybe you've lost some of your money, but
or your memories.
You're still alive.
Yeah.
I don't know how we'll get to that point, but every fictional representation of anything is a metaphor for something we're actually going to do someday.
Once again, Frank Herbert did it in Dune with Duncan, Idaho.
Exactly.
He's the only character to recur through all the thousands of years. And for most of it, it was a separate Gola grown from his cells, and with all new memories, the same skills and basic coding as the original, but it was a new person every time, and he'd wake up and not remember the previous life. And then at one climactic point in the series, the goal is able to reawaken every single memory from every single life, which had been stored there secretly all along. And so then you have that continuity of like, oh yeah, I was in these separate bodies each time, but this is a continuous story of me.
Yeah, which is, again, a metaphor for something that's actually going to happen in some way.
Yeah.
Also, when you describe it like that, suddenly it makes me realize that people that developed Assassin's Creed probably read Dune.
Yeah, you know, I always say Dune doesn't get enough credit.
Yeah, well, the problem with Dune is too many people know Dune as the shitty David Lynch movie.
Right. They just know it as sandworms and that kind of thing.
And, like, some, like, awful score by Toto.
Right.
And, like, oh, man, that movie was bad.
We never got to see Jodorowsky's Dune, which was supposed to have a Pink Floyd soundtrack, all kinds of crazy shit. He really was going to do it. It's one of the great misses in cinematic history, as is another Jodorowsky project that never got done, but there is physical scripts of the Lamb Lies Down on Broadway movie that he was working on with Gabriel at some point, and then it never happened.
And what about Jodorowsky's version of Batman that he was working on with Harlan Ellison?
That's not true.
I know, wouldn't it have been great? But wouldn't it have been great?
Yeah.
You know who I just found out wanted to write for Batman in some aspect was Donald Westlake. Donald Westlake was apparently a closeted Batman fan.
Really? Isn't he this author that publishes under multiple pseudonyms?
Yeah, no, Westlake wrote under his own name. He wrote a series of famous novels about a thief named Parker under the name Richard Stark. He used the name wait. Oh, man, I can't remember that. Who was it that wrote Anarchaos? Kurt Clark, maybe? One of them was... now I can't remember the rest of them. He had a lot of different names. Yes. One of the books that was published under a different name, the blurb on the cover said, "I wish I'd written this. Donald Westlake."
Nice.
He was fucking awesome. He wrote so many books, and some of them were the funniest things you'll have ever read, like Comfort Station by J. Morgan Cunningham. That was the one I was just trying to think of, the one where he says, "I wish I wrote this." Comfort Station by J. Morgan Cunningham. The Parker books are so terse and cold-blooded and hard-boiled that it's part of the reason he wrote them under a different name was because it was so different than the light, witty caper comedies he was writing under his own name. And I forget what I was trying to say. That's also where I can't remember what name it was now, but the name that Stephen King used to write under.
Richard Bachman?
Richard comes from Richard Stark.
Nice.
Yeah, I knew it was Richard something, and then Bachman is from Bachman Turner Overdrive, I'm pretty sure.
Wow.
I might be wrong about that, but I'm trying to think of another Bachman.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I don't know if that part's true, but no, Richard from Richard Bachman is after, because he was going for a pseudonym, so he went to a already well-established pseudonym and paid homage to it, or whatever.
That's cool.
I don't know Stephen King, and then I'm out with Stephen King. We only made out once. No, but remember the Quantum Leap Halloween episode about the guy that was...
I was just thinking of that. Yeah, I was just thinking of that.
Yeah, I was putting that thought in your head, Mark.
Young Stevie King. The Boogeyman was a great Quantum Leap episode.
Quantum Leap Quantum Leap is a show that can be done today.
Yeah, you just have to get the chemistry right between whoever Sam and Al is.
Yeah, and to fit into modern serialized storytelling, spend a little more time on, like, the overarching story and, like, what, you know, maybe more scenes of the people in Sam's time.
Yeah. Well, they were doing that in the 5th season. They would do more what was going on at the project.
Exactly, like, more of that.
Yeah. And they had the new one.
More of the Evil Leapers.
I don't know about the Evil Leapers, but yeah.
More of something like the Evil Leapers.
Well, that was the big reveal in the last episode, was that there are other Leapers, and some of them are dead. So they're what in stories people would call angels or spirit guides, but they're just Leapers that go around.
Ascended walk-ins.
Yeah, walk-ins, right? That are just fixing these little holes in time, and then Sam has become one of them. And you know, the other thing was, before they knew they were going to get canceled, the last episode was supposed to have a scene at the end that was cut that explains, Al's explaining to his wife that Sam's still leaping, he's just leaping as himself. So there was almost a vision to have it go a completely different angle, where in the beginning, like, yeah, you're safe, you're disguised as other people, so you can sort of play the roles as other person, but now you're leaping as yourself and you got to do things that makes it much harder, more difficult.
Yeah, and when you put it that way, it's all a metaphor for spiritual evolution.
Right. And that's my big explanation to people when they're disappointed about how the episode ended, where it says he never returned home. Really? You could fix it by changing just one word. Change never to has not yet returned home, is what they should have done. Never was too final. But even if you accept he never returned home, it makes perfect sense.
You can't.
You've transcended time and space. You can now, by your own will, you can go wherever you want. Like, yeah, you could go home maybe to take a little rest or a break or a sabbatical, but it's just one finite piece of a lifetime. Like, you're beyond that now. You can't really go home again, except for you, because you never left.
No, I'm just still in the process of trying to make my home.
Ah. There you go.
I mean, it's been a 40-year process, but...
But no, there's plenty of things they could do. In fact, it doesn't have to be Sam. Sam has a daughter that he impregnated somebody in the past, kind of by accident. She ends up growing up, finding out who her real dad is, and works at the project trying to bring him home. So what you do is, you have her be the leaper, encountering Sam, because Scott Bakula, he's old, he's still young enough where he could still pull this off. At least for a season, and then she takes over. She goes after looking for him.
No, I don't think you do it as a continuation of the original one. I think I know that you're tired of the concept, but I think this is something that you just actually do a reboot of.
You just do a reboot, start from the I
think
guess so.
Because then you start from the beginning. Like, you even, instead of dumping it in media res, where, well, the first thing is he's in some pilot in the 1960s, like...
Yeah.
Like, start, like, I don't know, like, your first, like, 3 episodes or whatever.
The
setting up the project.
Yeah.
And, like, you never really find out, like, what that life was like, what his, I mean...
You do, but...
You don't.
You have to follow the series
you have to
follow
the series, and the series is designed as a series that you can just watch the episodes in any order, piecemeal,
yes.
And...
He has the Swiss cheese memory, so things come up.
So there's not...
It becomes more continuous, though, when you get to the character backstories. Like, there does become a single narrative for Al's background and Sam's background. But
it might be spread over the course of
the
40
early
different
days
episodes.
of the project are only ever referred to in conversation. They're never actually seen.
That's what I mean. And, like, maybe they don't need to be seen, but maybe there is some story you can wring out of that.
Oh, totally. Well, the opening line is pressured to prove his theories or lose funding. So you have the government approve this project, and then suddenly it's not getting results as fast as they want, and he prematurely ejaculates into the accelerator.
Which, if you think about it, is really that bit they just more or less cribbed maybe not the funding part, I don't remember, but that, as they're set up, is cribbed from The Incredible Hulk.
Interesting.
Which isn't much earlier.
Right.
If you think about it, it was only like, what? A decade?
Yeah.
Tops
yeah.
earlier.
Okay.
Which in those days was slower. That's not like a decade now. It's like we've gone through 5 different cultures.
Yeah.
It's the MacGuffin is the story is set up by the scientist, perhaps foolishly, using the experiment on himself. And then forever afterward, it turns him into a person who doesn't have a home, but moves from situation to situation and helping people out.
Right. Well, there was Highway to Heaven, too.
Yeah, but Highway to Heaven was not specifically the trope of the scientist uses the experiment on himself.
Sure.
There was Kung Fu. There was, I mean, the moving from town to town and helping people show is... Yeah, well, wasn't that what The Fugitive was?
Yeah. Quantum Leap just brought it to the next level.
Yeah, well, Quantum Leap, by making it, instead of moving from town to town and helping people, moving from time period to time period in different people's lives to help people.
Yeah.
Gave it a meta... I think that it should be done again. It needs to be done right.
Yeah, again, to me it's all about the chemistry. It's the same thing I feel about the new Ghostbusters movie, which I've already said, but what that movie lacked more than anything was real chemistry between the actors.
Yeah, well, I haven't seen it yet, so I have to reserve.
And that's what made the
judgment,
original
but...
Ghostbusters was the chemistry between those 4 guys.
Yeah, well, the chemistry is almost always one of the most important things.
Yeah.
Is how the players play off each other.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't really understand people very well. Like they're like abstract objects to me.
How about a shout out? Shout out to Aaron Klieger. What would you say to Aaron Klieger right now if he happened to stumble upon this?
Oh man, Aaron Klieger, where the hell you been, man? The fuck? Like, I don't know. I guess Aaron Klieger just couldn't hang with us. It's alright. Not everyone can.
Yeah.
I'd like to give a shout out to my boy Attila Zandroti. Every time Mark's in town, Attila makes sure he's not. Anytime Attila's coming up, make sure that like Mark's like out in Florida so he can't possibly put in an appearance. I don't know why he's been shook a Mark, but it's been going on for like 7 years now.
Yeah, it's getting ridiculous.
I don't know, maybe he's afraid you're going to flash him again or something.
That's why I'm relying on you to let me know when he's coming down next time.
How
about a shout out to Diane?
Oh yeah, Diane. I love Diane. Diane is awesome. I talked to Diane about Castlevania when it came out at the beginning of this month. Castlevania.
Shout out to Russell Sprague.
Hey, what's up, Russ? It's still somehow we occupy the same planet. It's true. Like, the universe not only manifests itself as me, but the universe also manifests itself as you, Russell Sprague. That is amazing to me, even now.
Awesome. Who else should we shout out to?
Shout out to Eric Henry, the world's biggest snowflake. He's like my #1 internet troll fan. So he'll find out about this and listen to this podcast.
It's on Facebook, right? The Eric Henry page?
Rifkin. Eric Rifkin.
Eric Rifkin.
Yeah, Eric Rifkin.
Right.
Erica Rifkin, and the real Eric Rifkin, and the fake Eric Rifkin, and the League of Eric Rifkins.
Do you have any final words of wisdom or advice for anybody who may be listening?
Be good people, but try and figure out what's actually going on. Don't be too attached to any one model, because any one model isn't exactly what's going on. It's just a model. And, I don't know. Fuck.
Sucks.
It's fine. I can
Start again.
I can do it better the second time anyway.
Yeah. So what is Panopticon?
Alright, so I wrote this short story in 1999, I want to say. If not, the party, like it's 1999. I wrote this short story in 1999. I had this idea in my head since, like, I don't know, 96 or so. This sprawling novel, I guess quasi-science fiction, this epic story about this person who discovers that he is trapped in a computer simulation and that his reality isn't real, and winds up becoming the messianic figure of this world. That's a very interesting idea. I bet you had that entirely independently and possibly prior to that of The Matrix. I sat down and I wrote this really over-the-top, absurdist, like Vonnegut meets Beckett, a little bit of Douglas Adams type wit, I guess. And some Douglas Adams inspired wit, for sure. But at the same time, I never quite felt that it was a finished product. So I never, in any of the book projects I was involved in, I never published it. And I went back every couple of years and would tool it up and take sections that didn't seem like they worked, or that they were the work of a more immature writer, and refashion them or lengthen them. And then about 2 years ago, I got the idea to expand it to a novel length. Ironically, because that's how this all started, was a novel I was never going to write. Shamelessly plagiarizing material from other book projects that I've worked on, and just putting them in something better and more cohesive. And I'm still working on it because I'm lazy and I don't have a good attention span. But I got lots of ideas, and it is the longest thing I've ever actually managed to not finish writing. I call it gonzo science fiction because I don't really have anything else. There is no... It's comedy, I guess. It's a satire on physics and metaphysics, on reality and surreality. It's detached and absurd, and it's about the ways that fiction and reality blur into one another. Picture it like this. You're born in a dank, smelly, dusty hut with a dirt floor. When you are old enough, you are set to work in the fields for the lord of the land. If you don't provide enough, the soldiers come for you. Perhaps you get drafted to fight in one of the dozens of small wars between this lord and that lord, or between this king and that king, or between the followers of this sect and the followers of that sect. Or perhaps you are drafted as a laborer for one of the great and grandiose projects your leader envisions. A big wall, a lavish palace, an ostentatious tomb. Better not complain. Maybe you even survive all of this, to come back to the home you do not own, to work again. From the day you were born to the day you die, your life is not your own. You cannot read. You know of no other life than a short and miserable one at service to people you have never even seen. Maybe if you're lucky, you will not fall victim to any one of the thousands of illnesses that they can't cure yet. Maybe if you're lucky, you won't be murdered outright in this era of rampant lawlessness. Maybe you'll live to a ripe old age, to see your children felled by war and disease and overwork, then die, then repeat. Continue this for a few thousand years. Or maybe that's too depressing for you, and you prefer to identify with the rulers. Who wouldn't? So how about this? You are born into more wealth and power than you rightly know what to do with. Your slightest whim is made into reality. You hold in your hands the lives and deaths of thousands of people. Dirty, smelly people, barely even people at all. You bask in pleasure every waking moment of your life. This is the divine right of kings. Then, one day, you get murdered by your own guards, or by your brother, or your son. Right before you die, you think for a moment about how tenuous your power always was, or more likely you just think about how unfair all of this is. Or heck, maybe you live a long life, and it's only after you die in your sleep that your entire bloodline is brutally wiped out by a competing dynasty. It happens. Either way you like, insert some dark ages here. Fast forward through the needless suffering, the ignorance, the filth. Or, if you're one of those Ren Fair type people, fast forward through an era of unheralded chivalry and honor.
If you've made it this far, thanks for listening. Head on over to opusmarcuspodcast.com for related links, including Noel's extensive writing blog, New Sun Rising, all It's the Crew webcomic episodes, Noel's book, If You Don't Give Me Heaven, and our book, Heroes and Hierophants. Please, help this podcast grow by showing your support. Rate us on iTunes, follow us on Facebook, heart us on SoundCloud, and share these episodes with friends, family, co-workers you wish to alienate, and aliens who wish to co-create. Here's one final excerpt from Noel's book, If You Don't Give Me Heaven, called Archie the Robot. The bard sits on the street corner, plucks at his zither, and sings an old tale of a man who woke up one day and realized he was a robot. To this man's further vexation, he soon came to the conclusion that all of his friends, his family, his co-workers, and in fact everyone at all, were also robots. He began to perceive his every action and the ways of the world around him as part of a vast and incomprehensible machine. And, the bard continues, on the day of his fateful revelation, the man shook his fist at the turbulent sky and swore to discover the creator of his absurd automaton existence and demand some sort of explanation for everything. And so the man, who the bard enigmatically refers to as Archibald, or mostly just Archie, began a spiritual and metaphysical journey towards his goal of a reckoning with his God. And, like most spiritual and metaphysical journeys, Archie's eventually directed him to drugs. Seeking the mental expanding effects of chemical substances as a method of reaching a higher understanding, Archie tried a little bit of everything, all the neat designer drugs that had supplanted natural narcotics centuries earlier. He popped pills of Pythagoras, a modified neurochemical that acted on the auditory center of the brain, making one hear the music of the spheres. However, in repeated uses, the music began to sound more and more like the crappy disco tunes he'd left behind with the rest of his life. He shot up with Mind Walk, a mental enhancer that promised a passionately intellectual trip, but after 2 hours of spurious and ill-conceived conclusions brought him right back to where he'd started, just more tired. He smoked Apotheosis, and it gave him visions of ineffable beauty, incomprehensible to any of his senses. But when it was over, he couldn't remember any of it, or most of the week before. And, after a while, as with all human endeavors, the means became the ends, and Archibald stopped using drugs so much for the boosts of insight and creativity they engendered, and started using drugs for the sake of using drugs. He used drugs to relax, to have a good time, to party, to just drown out the noise of the world. Finally, he forgot all about his mission to interrogate the Creator and began a new goal, one of living life for drug experiences. The bard stops singing momentarily and plays a mournful solo on his zither. Eventually, his mind half gone to the cheap thrills he drowned his brain in from the previous few years, Archibald decided the time to do something sudden and radically different had been reached. He packed up his bags and moved to Las Vegas. Centuries earlier, Las Vegas had been a mecca of corruption and iniquity, where the often interlinked drives of avarice and bad taste had reigned supreme. Now, all that remained were the crumbling ruins of the sleazy former tourist attraction and the burgeoning city of misfits that had been built underneath it. Scores of people flocked to Vegas every year, seeking redemption, a new life, or just anonymity, the same reasons they once would have joined the French Foreign Legion. Archie became a bartender in a club for neo-beatniks hollowed out 2 miles beneath the sin-ridden desert, serving psychotropic smart drinks and hard root beer to his grizzled and deviant clientele. Never once did the thought of gods or robots cross his mind. But Archie's life wasn't just denial and the continued act of losing himself. There was also romance, a point the bard underlines with the velvet tones of the zither. At the club, Archie met a beautiful girl reading a dog-eared copy of the classic Taoist writings of Lei Tzu. Her name, which is different every time this story is told, is Mary Lou. Archie and Mary Lou discovered common bonds, such as a love for philosophy and 30-minute-long songs about hobbits, and began dating. Within a week, they were fucking. Within a year, they were married. A subtle wedding reception music motif flits in and out of the accompanying zither score. Then, Archie's dreams of continuing his bohemian Las Vegas lifestyle indefinitely were shattered when Mary Lou wound up pregnant. It was time to return to the real world and get a real job, to prepare for the day when he would become a daddy. He wound up getting a job at the bursar's office of a small college a few miles from where he grew up, and, despairing of the inanity of his job, Archie began to drink, heavily. When his son Othello was born, Archie began to drink even more. 2 years later, his wife bore a daughter, Hammy, and as each year grew on, Archie's heart grew colder, and he grew more bitter, and he drank. On the Christmas that Othello was 6 years old, the boy got from his parents a lovely electronic toy robot, which could speak and shoot missiles and show a little cartoon on its chest. Othello ran around the house playing with this robot for months, and, for some reason he couldn't quite place his finger on, Archie always felt a vague and uneasy sense of disturbance whenever he saw the toy. He poured himself another drink and tried to ignore it. And this was how the years went by, the bard sings to his listeners. Archie grew distant from his wife, cheating on her with a student secretary in the office for a few years until the student graduated. He grew distant from his children, who began to seriously resent him and hate him. When it came time for them to go to college, they left and rarely ever came back. Archie began to feel nothing but contempt for all other human beings. Finally, one day, Archie died. Screaming at a red light to turn green in traffic, he felt a shooting pain in his left arm and then suffered a relatively painless heart attack. His foot slipped off the brake and his car slid into the intersection, causing a massive 12-car pileup. But, being dead, he knew nothing of this, of course. Another zither solo, this one played to sound like a wayward soul ascending into the afterworld, interrupts the narration. Another zither solo, this one played to sound like a wayward soul ascending into the afterworld, interrupts the narration. And then, like all sentient creatures eventually do, Archie found himself before his creator. And all of a sudden he remembered everything. He remembered the robots. He remembered his mission of 30 years ago, to find God and interrogate him. He felt a sense of sadness at losing the fire and purpose he'd had when he was younger, and becoming another bitter alcoholic just like his dad had been, and his dad's dad before him. But, he thought as he smiled forcefully, it is often true that we get to where we're meant to get, no matter the methods. Despite everything, he had finally found God. He looked around him. An infinite plane of light gray linoleum floor tiles, surrounded by an even more infinite blackness above him. The only source of light was a blinding glow from behind the bearded deity, standing directly in front of him. Archie walked over to God and shook him by his robes, demanding an answer for the total absurdity of existence, for the petty lives eked out by him and his fellow robots in vain, for everything. And God rumbled with a deep bass voice and said,
"Hast thou an arm like God, or canst thou thunder with a voice like him? Behold now the hippopotamus, which I made with thee. He eateth grass, as an ox. Lo now, his strength is in his loins, and his force is in the navel of his belly. He moveth his tail like a cedar. The sinews of his stones are wrapped together. His bones are as strong pieces of brass. His bones are like bars of iron. He is the chief of the ways of God. He that made him can make his sword to approach unto him. Surely the mountains bring him forth food, where all the beasts of the field play. He lieth under the shady trees, in the covert of the reed and fens. The shady trees cover him with their shadow. The willows of the brook compass him about. Behold, he drinketh up a river, and hasteth not. He trusteth that he can draw up Jordan into his mouth. He taketh it with his eyes. His nose pierceth through snares.
Archie began to wonder what the hippopotamus had to do with his questions. Were the hippos robots too? Before he could interrupt and ask the Lord to cut the chase, the booming voice continued on. As he spoke, however, the imposing figure began to shake, as if with a great rage, and smoke like burnt rubber issued from his ears and nose.
Canst thou draw out Leviathan with a hook, or his tongue with a cord which thou lettest down? Canst thou put a hook into his nose, 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 into his nose, into his nose, into his nose, nose?
And Archie looked at his sputtering god closer, and walked around behind him. There was a tag sticking out of the back of his neck, and on closer examination it said, Book of Job, chapters 40 to 41, King James Version. God was a robot too. Whether or not there's more to the song than that remains uncertain, since, at this point in the narrative, some irate heckler always bounces a styrofoam cup or a half-eaten apple off the bard's head, and he packs up his zither and wanders off into the twilight, muttering under his breath about cretins who'd never know art if it kicked their teeth in. What's your advice for people in life?
My advice is to stay strong, be helpful, be smart, be brave, be powerful, be kind, and be loving to everyone, even your pets. Let's say something bad happened to you. Move on. It already happened. Just move on to the better things in life.
I hope it's really not just us. Right? And everyone else is like, self-created eternal hell. No. Every waking moment is a joyous experience of growth and opportunity. I find myself totally spiritual centered and at peace with the balance between me and the rest of the universe.
What a heck of time!
After all that, they won the game.
something's moving, yeah. Still in ruin, something's going down.
Crazy.